Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome to another 3 hours of random Fallout New Vegas locations. If you ever watched the Unexplored Mojave, you know what to expect. This is a compilation of various episodes from the Unexplored Mojave. This is mainly meant for people who requested it as a way to relax, enjoy, and learn something about Fallout, maybe to use it while you're driving, maybe to use it while you're sleeping, or studying, or building something in Fallout 4 or Fallout 76, whatever it might be. We're going to be starting at episode 139 today, which is the Dorado Dry Lake. Sit back, relax, and please enjoy. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Dorado Dry Lake, along with the Dorado Gas and Service. Obviously, given by the name, these two locations are right next to each other and kind of are part of the same geographic region. So obviously this is a pre-war gas station right along Highway 95. Now, I wanted to mention that if you fast travel here and you're vilified by the NCR or the Legion, you will often be attacked by assassins or by rangers. So just something to keep in mind when fast traveling to this area. So first, let's go ahead and jump into the gas station. Now, this is a location pretty much in the central part of the map, and a lot of players will see it as they make their way towards New Vegas. It's right by Vault 11 and Novak as well. Now, along the highway, we have a billboard for the Hoover Dam, and then we can also find a traveling merchant occasionally who will sell, obviously, various goods. This traveling merchant had some mini nukes and other goods, so I bought them. Now, in the outer part of the gas station, we can find a campfire along with a lot of makeshift bedding. There was also a hydra on the ground, which is, pretty decent, but not a whole lot outside, but it is a place that you can rest along your adventure towards New Vegas. Now, inside the gas station, there's actually some pretty decent loot, and I never really, observed gumdrops before, but I just wanted to point out there's, a radiation symbol on them. Obviously, they might actually be irradiated, knowing the Fallout universe, especially things like nuke-cola, quantum. Now, inside this gun cabinet, we can find some ammunition, but not a whole lot else, and there's also some bottle caps and some star bottle caps next to the register. Now, over in these ammunition boxes, we can actually find some missiles, and in these sacks, we can find things like stim packs and ammunition, so that's pretty good, especially for a new player. And then heading back outside, we can find a billboard for the state lottery. Obviously, some kind of Big Ranch, Nevada state lotto. So, of course, Nevada, gambling, lots of state lotteries, probably in the Fallout universe. Now, past this billboard are some boat flies at the bottom. Now, boat flies are pretty common in Fallout 3, but in Fallout New Vegas, much less so. They tend to be near open water, and of course in the Mojave Desert, there just isn't a lot of open water. And then on the southern end of the Dorado Dry Lake, we can find a Helios 1 billboard, along with seeing Helios 1 in the background, which is located at the southern end of Dorado. And there's also a boat fly behind this billboard as well. And we can see where this boat fly was hanging out near these water puddles up here, and we can also see crane or a land mover and a lot of construction equipment at the top of this hill. It appears they were kind of working on the road here during the pre-war era before obviously the bombs fell, but there's nothing really up here besides it, aesthetic purposes. Now, before going into the Dorado Dry Lake bed, I wanted to go over some quick, interesting facts. So, like many places in Fallout New Vegas, it's based on the real-world Dorado Dry Lake, located in Clark County, south of Las Vegas. It's in the exact same geographical area. And also, for whatever reason, you can find a lot of dogs around this area, so upon fast traveling to the Dorado Dry Lake, you might discover vicious dogs fighting with fire ants, and of course the fire ants will probably win. Also, on the northern end of the Dry Lake, sometimes you can find a lone prospector's dog. However, this dog cannot be interacted with, but sometimes it too will fight the fire ants located in the Dry Lake. Now, this location can be a good place to get jalapenos along with barrel cactus. So obviously, if you're doing some crafting or scavenging, this is a good place to go. And then just walking towards the Dry Lake, and eventually you'll discover the location like I did. And over here by this rock, we can see some barrel cactus that we can harvest. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of fire ants within the dry lake. Now, these could prove challenging to a newer player, but the riot shotgun is so overpowered. And again, Veronica almost committed suicide by jumping in front of a person firing a gun. There, we got really close to killing Veronica. Oh my god. But anyways, the fire ants kept coming, and they don't stop coming. And basically, the fire ants can just keep coming out of this hole and respawning. I noticed when I left the area or reloaded a save, there would just be more fire ants, kind of disregarding the 3-day spawn rule. So the fire ants are really plentiful here, which I guess might be good for XP, but obviously there's a lot of XP to be earned in Fallout New Vegas, so I don't think you would ever have to do that. Now, just north of the gas station, we can find this acoustic guitar, along with the Lonesome Drifter. Now, this character is quite interesting. First, he hails from Montana, so shout out to people who live in Montana. And also, he has a mysterious revolver on his body. Now, this can be acquired through the quest talent pool, where you recruit him to work at the Tops Casino as a musician. However, for the purpose of this video, I just wanted to show off the revolver really quick and then reload the save, because I actually really love this character. And this revolver will always make those sounds whenever you equip or holster your gun. Now, over towards the northern edge of the dry lake, we can find what appears to be an old camping ground, kind of near Vault 11, and we can find some grills, and everything's in rough shape though, as I imagine the dry lake bed would flood from time to time. We can also find a trailer buried underneath the sand. Now, there's also a giant military convoy here, assumingly they were going to Vault 11. Now, this is the largest chain reaction possible within Fallout New Vegas, of course without some kind of mods or something. So you can do a lot of crazy things here. You can try and launch your character really far. Also, if you come here in hardcore mode, it's possible to kill your companions here, as they can, well, obviously they won't respawn, and then their body could be missing forever. Now, I tried blowing myself up, but honestly my body didn't get flung very far, so I tried to explode Veronica to see what would happen. So as we can see here, not only can it send people flying very far, but also all of the debris can be sent very far as well, and this debris can kill or injure the player character or any nearby NPCs. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below, and as always, until next time.
The first thing you should know is that Freeside is run by a pack of yahoos that call themselves the Kings. Their leader, who oddly enough calls himself the King, currently has his hands full trying to prevent an all-out riot in Freeside. Caught a rumor the other day that some of the clientele over at the Wrangler have been making some rather strange requests. Stuff like weirdos wanting the services of ghouls and such. Have you tried going to the strip only to be stopped by those big metal murder machines? Happens every day around here. But if you know the right people, you can get through the gate without being a rich man. Saw a strange thing the other day. The King took that robo-dog of his over to the old Mormon fort. Weird thing was that the dog was flipping out and had to be restrained by a few of the King's men. Drugs are everywhere in Freeside, and even people you might not expect have become addicts. Jacob Hoff, for instance. That man was a brilliant chemist before he picked up the habit. Now, just another junkie.
Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Freeside, which is probably one of the most visited cities within New Vegas, so I definitely want to try and go a little bit behind the scenes and try and uncover some secrets. Now, Freeside and the locations within it were recommended to me by follower 4633, who mentioned Mick and Ralph's had a second floor, and then Venom Mecca 858, who just mentioned a lot of the activities to do in Freeside and some of the hidden things within Freeside. Now within Freeside, we'll see a lot of neon signs, and the gate here is reflective of the real-life counterpart, Fremont Street. This is a very famous street within Las Vegas and somewhere that I've actually been. It's a really cool area with lots of shopping, and they occasionally have events going on here. And so Freeside in New Vegas is based on Fremont Street. So let's jump into Freeside. Now, I highly doubt you would need to know the location, but here it is on the Boy anyway. It's literally right in the middle of the map, and it's right before the New Vegas Strip. And one big thing about Freeside is there is rampant crime. So we're at the intersection near the East Gate, and if you come back through this alley for the first time, you will get ambushed by several thugs. And as you saw at the beginning, it's not uncommon to have thugs attack you or some of the residents or guards within Freeside. And you also notice the streets of Freeside have a lot of bus stops, so perhaps the public transportation in the pre-war era was pretty good. Now there's going to be a lot of locals within Freeside as well, and most of them, though, are drunks or chem addicts. Over here we can find the Vagrant, and if you have low intelligence during the quest I Could Make You Care, he actually has some very amusing dialogue, and he'll sound extremely intelligent to you, but you have to be doing the quest, and you have to have low intelligence for that option. Now, also hanging around this part of Freeside is Dixon, and Dixon will sell a variety of chems and drugs that the player can buy. And then also over here we have a homeless ghoul named Rotface, and he's the one that you heard at the beginning of the video, and he has various information on Freeside and other things going on in the world, such as Nipton, Nellis Air Force Base, the Gun Runners, the Omertas, the NCR, the Legion, etc., etc. In the top of the building here we can find Max and Stacy. Now Max has a unique weapon on him, the Euclid Sea Finder, and you need to convince him to give it to you. It'll either cost 1,000 caps or 20 if you have high enough barter. Also, if you have the Child at Heart perk, you can convince him to give it to you for free. Now, as you saw earlier, that King's member approached me and just gave me some kind of random loot. Usually it'll be like caps or water or food or stim packs. This happens if your reputation in Freeside is good. And then over here we have Mick and Ralph's, and inside, Ralph can be convinced to make a fake passport to get onto the New Vegas Strip for the player. However, it will cost you 500 caps. Of course, that's better than having to have the 2,000 caps if you're in a hurry to get to the New Vegas Strip. Now, the alternative would also be to use an NCR uniform and to use the tram system from Camp McCarran. I also wanted to point out there are various advertisements within Mick and Ralph's that I thought were pretty cool. We have a Mr. Handy, sugar bombs, and U.S. propaganda from the war. We can also see some kind of space show and some kind of like tapestry. And there's also a dinosaur in here that I decided to throw. Then over here we have an ad for Super Duper Mart, which is in Fallout 3 and the Fallout TV show. And then again, that poster for whatever that TV show is. Now, there's also a mole rat skin on the wall next to the tapestry, which I thought was pretty cool. I've never really seen that within Fallout before, but it makes sense. Then there's actually a second floor to Mick and Ralph's, and I didn't ever realize this until follower 4633 mentioned it in a previous video. Now, Mick will obviously be the man who sells weapons and ammunition, and he can have some very good weapons, but if you have 50 speech or higher, you can convince Mick to show you his special inventory, which consists of some items that would otherwise be illegal. And the special inventory just consists mainly of ballistic weapons and some uncommon loot as well. Now on the second floor, we can just see it's the living quarters for Mick and Ralph. There are some magazines scattered around, also an interesting Sunset Sarsaparilla poster, but really not a whole lot up here. It's just Mick and Ralph's living quarters, and Mick was actually hanging out up here, so if you're ever in a situation where you can't find Mick or Ralph, they might be upstairs. Now on their desk, they have a hula girl, which I thought was pretty cool, and then of course there's just a bathroom. Now across the street, we can find some kind of building, maybe an old apartment building or something that lies in ruins. Now this lady had some very interesting dialogue.
Hey, watch your back. There be a pack of old ladies running around here somewhere. Don't let them catch you unawares.
Unfortunately, that King's member interrupted her speech, but she's talking about a gang of old ladies? That sounds pretty wild to me. Anyways, on the second floor, there's actually a lot of ammunition boxes in the corner on this side, so make sure to come over here and get that ammo if you're a new player. Also in the corner of this building, we can find a dead man, and it literally just says, "Search Man." Now this man is actually a part of the quest, "I Could Make You Care," and you need to find this man during that quest. Now it appears that this man tried to get his slave or explosive collar off of him using the wrench, but he obviously failed. So quite a terrible fate that he was met with. Now moving on to the northeastern part of Freeside near the old Mormon fort, there is a little alleyway, and we can kind of go behind these buildings, but there is nothing back here besides a couple of dumpsters. And then over by this fire pit, we can find Grex, who has some really messed up, albeit a bit funny, dialogue.
Hey man, can you spit? What? Thank you, Mr. Obvious. Haven't heard that in a while. My eye? A scum-humping water baron did this to me. No one talks trash about my eye. That's it. No one insults the eye. Ah! You like that?
So we can just keep egging this ghoul on to the point where he will try to kill you. Kind of messed up, but at the same time, he shouldn't really kill somebody because of words. Now over here we have two children, and normally they're chasing a giant rat, but for whatever reason they kind of glitched out in their pathing, and if you shoot the giant rat, these two kids will actually go over to the rat and eat it. So clearly this is a demonstration of the extreme poverty that is present within Freeside. Also, the kids will thank you for killing the rat. Over here we have a new Mojave Express drop box, and you can use this to transport items around New Vegas. Kind of an underutilized mechanic within this game. Now heading towards the north entrance, we can find some train tracks that used to run through Freeside. Obviously they cannot be utilized anymore. And down this alleyway you might find a dead body called Little Buster. Little Buster is a bounty hunter involved in the quest 3-Card Bounty. Upon completing that quest, Little Buster will mention he wants to travel to the Strip to gamble with his caps. Now unfortunately, he did not make it, and there's no way to save him. Over here we have Gennaro, who sells food right next to the entrance, and he will actually admit that his food will eventually give you food poisoning. A lot of it is just rodents and other wasteland creatures that obviously he cooked, and he is now selling it to most likely locals, but perhaps a few travelers down on their luck. And as I mentioned, the King members will occasionally give you some goods, which is always nice, and it's a good reason to have a good reputation with them, besides the fact they are just awesome and really cool and good people. Inside the old Mormon fort, we can find the followers of the Apocalypse, Arcade Gannon, one of my favorite companions within the game. can be found here. Also, the Followers of the Apocalypse are just a really good organization. They're basically a humanitarian organization that try to help people in the wasteland. Fun fact, Caesar used to be a follower, but now he leads one of the most evil armies within the waste. Now, near this bus, which serves as the entrance to the next portion of Freeside, is a child who acts as a crier for Mick and Ralph's. If you point a gun at him and look down the barrel, he will have some unique dialogue for you. Over here we can find Tapper, who explains the water situation in Freeside is not good, and that they have to charge for water, otherwise the NCR would get angry with them. But you can buy fresh water from him if you need it, useful in a hardcore playthrough. Also, we can see they're growing some crops here, and this door over here also leads to the next section of Freeside. Now, when I entered the next section of Freeside, I found some NCR troops, which I thought was interesting. I've never really noticed NCR within Freeside. Then over here we have the Kings. The Kings are Elvis reenactors, and they don't really know who Elvis is, but they think it's pretty cool. Now, if you talk to the King, who is the leader, you can help him with his dog Rex, making Rex a companion. And the Kings, just all around, are a very wholesome organization that do try to help the people of Freeside. However, they might get into some conflict with the NCR. Now, across the street, we can find the crier for the Atomic Wrangler. This crier is extremely controversial within Fallout New Vegas and just in general. Basically, the voice actor was only 13, and she is voicing a prostitute, which has caused a lot of criticism or controversy. However, the developers stated they don't really know how that happened because of the rushed development of New Vegas. They just hired several companies to take care of the voice acting. So it boils down to a very unfortunate mistake. Now we are inside Silver Rush, and Silver Rush is normally occupied by merchants. However, they get into conflict with the Brotherhood of Steel. As you can see here, I sided with the Brotherhood of Steel. Now, across the street, we can find the Atomic Wrangler. This serves as the lone casino within Freeside. Now, this casino is ran by Francine and James Garrett. They're known as the Garretts. They have a variety of quests that they will offer the player. Now, over here we have Hadrian, who is a comedian that acts for the Atomic Wrangler. He has a stand-up comedy show. And of course, over here we have the casino part where we can gamble. However, I was banned because I won too much money. Now, there are a variety of quests that you can get from the Garretts. However, the one I wanted to cover specifically is Wang Dang Atomic Tango. The reason I wanted to cover this quest is because it leads to some unique interactions within Freeside. And it's just kind of a cool quest, or interesting, I think is a better word, interesting quest that the player can complete. So basically, the Atomic Wrangler offers escorts to its customers, and recently James Garrett has received some odd requests. He needs a robot, a real-life cowboy, and a smooth talker. This shall lead us to the southern portion of Freeside, which is probably the easiest part of Freeside to miss. Now over here we have a ruined store. This is important to the quest GI Blues, which involves the NCR and the Kings. Essentially, the NCR was using this place to distribute food to NCR citizens. Now over here in the very back corner we can find Cerulean Robotics. This is a robotics factory, obviously during the pre-war era. And now it's infested with giant rats, so you need to make sure to kill them, but pretty easy to kill. Now within this facility, we can find a Star Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle cap. Now the most important thing though is the sex robot. If you head over to this tool cabinet, we can pick it, and we can get a key card for the terminal. This terminal will allow us to reboot the robot, and then if you have 60 science, you can program it to be a sex robot. Or you can visit Mick and Ralph's and buy a holotape for 150 caps, or with 35 speech, it can be brought down to 100 caps. After this, you have to tell Fisto to go back to the Atomic Wrangler, but he has some very interesting dialogue.
Yes, sir. Fisto reporting for duty. Please assume the position. I am programmed for your pleasure. Please assume the position. Visto will report to the Atomic Wrangler for further orders.
So if that kind of thing floats your boat, there you go.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
once we leave this factory, we'll have a very interesting interaction.
Lucky what we have here, ladies. Another unsuspecting Ponce.
This is one of my favorite interactions within all of New Vegas. You get ambushed by a gang of old ladies. Now, judging by the loot on their body, they appear to have had some success. They have bottle caps, cigarettes, and they use rolling pins as their weapon. So I wonder who that unfortunate soul was that met their end to the old ladies. Now, in order to recruit a cowboy or a cowgirl, we have to head over to the Followers of the Apocalypse in the old Mormon fort, and then Beatrix Russell will be able to help us out, and you can convince her to work at the Atomic Wrangler. Now, when I was coming to the next area, I noticed that this drunk man was puking on the wall. This is actually a unique animation within Fallout New Vegas, so I thought it was pretty cool, and something I have never actually noticed before. Then over here, Santiago can act as our smooth talker, and he can be convinced pretty easily to go work at the Atomic Wrangler. Upon finding everyone and telling them to go to the Atomic Wrangler, you can go back to James Garrett to collect your reward, and if you have a high enough speech, you can increase that reward for more caps. Interestingly enough, obviously in Fallout New Vegas, an escort service is not considered bad or negative, as completing this quest will grant you a significant amount of reputation within Freeside. No doubt a very interesting and humorous quest within Fallout New Vegas, and something that might be missed on a playthrough. Now, on the southern part of Freeside, there is a long alleyway. However, this alleyway is kind of pointless. It is only utilized during the quest, Bodyguard for Hire, and basically, Oris takes you down this pathway and then fakes an ambush with fiends to justify his high price tag. And then I have no idea what that Securitron is doing with that wall, but appears to be a glitch. And over here we have a destroyed and burnt out bus. So it would really appear that buses used to be a big part of Freeside's infrastructure. But of course now, there are no buses. One last bit of interesting information, all of the telephone poles within Freeside have metal plates on them that read TES-04. Now, this is a reference to the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And of course, the Elder Scrolls is Bethesda's other really big franchise besides Fallout. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. Now I know this video was quite long, and I was debating about the best way to cover Freeside, if I should break it up by individual location, or just do the entire town. Ultimately I decided on the entire town. I just thought it would be easier and more fun for people to be able to see all of Freeside at one time. If you guys have any recommendations for the next video, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. The Army of Otters here, and today we're going to be checking out Walking Box Cave. This is recommended to me by Little Dre, who is always giving me places to visit, so thank you very much for the recommendation, Little Dre. Walking Box Cavern is located west of Camp Searchlight, and southwest of Novak, and just east of Nipton. Now this is a location I did not know about. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it is surrounded by a lot of important locations, as I just mentioned. So let's check out Walking Box Cavern. So as you approach Walking Box Cavern, you're going to encounter a lot of Night Stalkers. Now these guys can be a little bit difficult if you're a lower level, but if you're a higher level, they can be pretty easy. Also, Veronica keeps trying to kill herself, if you can't tell. And then here on the Pip-Boy, you can see the location of Walking Box Cavern, just south of Dead Wind Cavern, one of the most difficult locations in New Vegas. Outside the entrance, we can find a hollowed-out rock, which will contain random loot. Now, the entrance to this cave is very large, and upon entering it, you're going to find purple glowing mushrooms, which creates a very beautiful and interesting aesthetic for this cave. Definitely probably my favorite cave within Fallout New Vegas, although it's a little bit similar to the Good Springs cave. Now in this main part of the cavern, you're going to find a duffel bag with some minor loot and some ammunition and some healing items, so nothing too terrible, but nothing too great. In the first part, heading to our right, we're going to find this small chamber filled with a couple of Night Stalkers, but there are not very many. Also, there is no loot located within this chamber, so the only thing in here are enemies and some beautiful looking mushrooms. Now, if we head to the back of the cave, we can find a room filled with Night Stalkers. There are quite a few, so you probably want to bring a companion with you if you're a lower level, trying to snag some good loot. And in the middle of this cave, we can find a duffel bag, which will contain really good loot, including combat armor, reinforced, which is worth a lot of caps. So if you're a new player, this is obviously a very good find. And besides that, that is pretty much all there is to Walking Box Cavern, a pretty small but interesting cave. Now, Walking Box Cavern is based on the real-life Walking Box Ranch. It's in the same exact geographic region, but Walking Box Ranch is actually quite famous. It was built by movie stars Rex Bell and Clara Bow in 1931, and it hosted and entertained many notable Hollywood figures, including Clark Gable, Carol Lombard, Errol Flynn, and Lionel Barrymore. So it used to be a very prominent ranch within the Hollywood community, and today it is owned by the United States Bureau of Land Management, and it is on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places. And today you can actually visit the ranch and do things around it. So pretty cool, and a place you can visit. As I said, the real-life location is accurate to Fallout New Vegas, and it is closest to the city of Searchlight, Nevada. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello ladies and gentlemen, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Ranger Station Charlie. Now today though, it's going to be a bit of a special or different episode, because I want to go through the events that transpired when I arrived at the station. So, let's jump into it. So when I first arrived at Ranger Station Charlie, I noticed a very odd scene. There was an NCR trooper with a throwing spear being shot by legendary assassins. Now, the legendary assassins killed this trooper, but I thought it was really weird that he was using throwing spears, which is normally a Legion weapon. So I just figured it was some kind of weird glitch or some kind of weird scripting, and I continued on my merry way, killing the legendary assassins. Then I waited for a few hours for the sun to get my scenic shot, and this happened. So as I was filming the scenic shot, I noticed there was an NCR trooper kind of going around back and forth with inside the station, and then all of a sudden he got blown up, and I was really confused. And then I noticed that there were legionaries within the station. However, these were recruits, not the normal assassins. So I knew something different was going on here. So upon further research, I found out that if you visit Novac and talk to Ranger Andy, he will tell you to visit this outpost, which triggers a Legion raid on the outpost, and you cannot prevent this raid from happening. So a really cool scripted event within Fallout New Vegas that I had no clue existed. Now the reason you would probably want to talk to Ranger Andy in Novac is in order to complete Raoul's unmarked quest, Old School Ghoul. And upon completing that quest, Raoul will have better perks and his appearance will be altered. So it's definitely a worthwhile quest. However, it's at the expense of Ranger Station Charlie. So if you visit Ranger Station Charlie in the early game, like I often do, it'll be an active NCR Ranger Station with NCR soldiers and, of course, Rangers. But if you go here later after talking to Andy, it'll be the scene of an ambush and some war crimes. So let's check out Ranger Station Charlie. So as you can see here on the Pip-Boy, Ranger Station Charlie is kind of nestled in this canyon in between Novac and Wolfhorn Ranch. I visit this location a lot on new playthroughs. Now, this appears to be an old trailer park, as we have a lot of trailers with bedding and shelves and all kinds of things around. Interestingly, the player character can sleep in the beds and can take any loot within the station without it being considered stealing. Normally, when you go to an NCR base or station, everything would be stealing, so very interesting. And in this trailer, we can find the scene of some potentially nefarious activity. We have blood spots on the ground, along with a rake. So maybe there was some kind of abuse or murder. Maybe it was the Legion. Who knows? Then we can also go to the top of some of these trailers, which were somehow neatly stacked on top of one another, providing good lookout points. Inside of this bungalow or Ranger Station Charlie, we can find the true aftermath of the Legion assault. Dead bodies and traps litter the ground. Be very careful. I almost killed myself while exploring this place. And we can find 2 audio logs underneath the desk and on top of these metal boxes. These audio logs do not spawn until after the ambush. And then there was a tripwire as I entered the bedroom, and we can find 2 NCR soldiers who have been undressed. Thankfully, we can now use the bed in order to heal our limbs. We'll go into those audio logs later. In the surrounding area, we can find a toxic dump site just to the east or northeast of Ranger Station Charlie. But besides that, not a whole lot in the surrounding area, besides train tracks and a train tunnel that leads to nowhere. And now we can listen to those audio logs, which we recovered earlier, and they tell the story about what happened at Ranger Station Charlie.
Drove the raiders off. No casualties. In the meantime, patrol's back. They're late. I hope they got a good excuse. What took...
And the audio log abruptly cuts, forcing us to use our imagination to think about what happened and why. But we don't need to think for very long.
This is a message to the NCR from the Legion. We are coming for you. Run, and we will catch you. Hide, and we will find you. No matter what you do, you are all going to die. We took one of the women alive.
And there we have it. We can see that the Legion were able to launch a successful ambush against Ranger Station Charlie. And when I came or visited, I just saw the aftermath, the immediate aftermath from the attack. After visiting Ranger Station Charlie, you can return to Ranger Andy and inform him about what has happened here, and the player will be given 100 caps along with reputation in Novac and with the NCR. We have no other information about the hostage which the Legion took, so we can only imagine that their fate is worse than death itself. After all of these events transpire, the player will complete the unmarked quest, Andy and Charlie. So as we can see, Ranger Station Charlie might appear to be a very peaceful and beautiful location at first glance. However, as events unfold, it becomes a place that is riddled in darkness. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please put them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and today we're going to be checking out Bootjack Cavern. Now this is a location that's located between the wrecked Highwaymen and Lucky Jim Mine. It is an unmarked location within the Mojave Wasteland, so there's no map marker. Now this video was recommended to me by Austin Letgo 7994. So thank you for telling me about this location, because I'll be honest, I've never really heard of it before. Now, during the quest, Bleed Me Dry, the player will be sent here by Red Lucy when the player needs to collect fire gecko eggs. Also, Red Lucy refers to this area as the Iretpa Peaks, which is a real location within real life, and it's in the same geographic area as Bootjack Cavern. Today, the Iretpa Peaks features a wilderness protection area, so there's a lot of nature and a lot of undisturbed nature. So let's check out Bootjack Cavern. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Bootjack Cavern is in between the wrecked Highwayman and Lucky Jim Mine. It's just southeast of Novac. Now the approach can be a little bit difficult because it can be hard to see from the road, but basically look for a cliff and then walk on up. Inside the cavern, we will of course find many fire geckos, since that is the reason you would be sent here by Red Lucy to collect fire gecko eggs. Now, I found crouching with my riot gear and a anti-material rifle was really OP because I could just sneak attack all of the fire geckos, so really easy to clear out this cavern. Now, in this first chamber, you can find a dead prospector who will have random loot on him. For me, he just had some bottle caps and not much else. Now, I also found that this rock in this chamber is a bit glitched. It's not all the way in the ground, so the texture is a little bit glitched out, and it was never fixed by the developers. Then if you go right from the entrance, we can go to the back of the cave, and this cave actually extends pretty far back, and we have some pretty beautiful parts of this cavern. Then in this final chamber, you will find several fire geckos, and you want to be careful as you enter because they will try to ambush you from the top, but I sent this little guy flying into the ceiling. So take out all of the fire geckos, and then this is the final chamber. I wanted to compliment this room because it really felt like a cave to me. The ground and the ceiling are quite low, and it's a little bit uneven terrain, and it feels like a much more natural cave than other caves in Fallout New Vegas. Also in this final chamber, we can find a dead prospector, and he had much better loot on him, having some ammunition, also some bottle caps, along with a hunting shotgun. So pretty good loot, especially if you were a lower to medium level player. But for the most part, that is Bootjack Cavern, an unmarked location in the Mojave Wasteland that I was pretty much unaware of. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Followers Outpost. This is a location near Lake Las Vegas in the 188 Trading Post. Now this is a location that is pretty easy to miss, and it doesn't have too much significance in the main game. However, during the quest I Could Make You Care, if the player suggests that Veronica should abandon the Brotherhood of Steel, she will ask the player character to take her to the Followers Outpost. Once there, Dr. Alvarez will ask the courier and Veronica to come back a day later for the main recruiter to come back. When you go back a day later, all of the followers will have been massacred by the Brotherhood of Steel. So a pretty dark ending to the people within this location if you follow that path. However, in my playthrough, I destroyed the Brotherhood of Steel because I sided with Mr. House, and I killed Veronica myself, so not a big deal. Anyways, as I mentioned before, Followers Outpost is by the 188, really close to the deserted shack. Now this area is actually an old train yard, and it's the end of the line, or end of the railroad, for whatever these train cars were used for, probably industry, but it does appear there were some passenger cars, judging by the train station at the REPCONN HQ. Now inside we can find some Followers Doctors, a Followers Guard, 2 guards, and one of these guards will always be a ghoul who has a normal voice, which is interesting, and then Dr. Alvarez. Now, Dr. Alvarez is a bit interesting because she will have a little bit of unique dialogue for every single companion in the game. So if you want, you can hear those things of dialogue in the game by bringing your companions to this outpost. Also, I wanted to point out that this Silver Rush billboard nearby has graffiti on it, so it looks like the new Silver Rush used some paint on the old Silver Rush billboard to advertise their business, and I just thought that was pretty cool. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please drop them in the comment section below, and as always, until next time. Man, this video was a long time coming. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave, the Army of Otters here, and today we're going to be looking at REPCONN HQ. This is recommended to me by Josh1312. Now this was recommended to me a long time ago, about 4 months ago, so I want to apologize for the delay in covering this location. There are just so many things in this location to talk about and to cover, and I wasn't sure how to approach it. And what I ended up doing was I decided to play through REPCONN in 2 different playthroughs. In the playthrough I'm using for this series, I've already cleared REPCONN HQ. However, there were some hidden items still left in the building, and I used that account or that playthrough for those items. But to showcase most of the facility, I used another playthrough that was newer to the game and had not explored REPCONN HQ. So some quick facts about REPCONN, the company. REPCONN was a rocket company in the pre-war era. Of course, if you've done the quest, Come Fly With Me, you're using REPCONN's launch facility to launch Jason Bright's Colt into the stars. Now, in 2075, House, the CEO of ROPCO Industries, purchased REPCONN, and he used it for weapon development, and it probably played a role, or somewhat of a role, in the defense of New Vegas, or Las Vegas at the time. Now, Mr. House had big plans to explore the stars, and using unmanned spacecraft in order to colonize and explore the stars beyond Earth. So let's check out REPCONN HQ. So REPCONN Headquarters is located towards the middle of the map, and it's definitely a place a lot of players will pass by on their way to New Vegas. Now, when I was approaching REPCONN, I got approached by a disguised Frumentarius, who offered me caps in order to keep fighting for Caesar's Legion. I have a mixed reputation with the Legion, and I've never had this interaction in Fallout New Vegas before, so I just thought I would throw it into the video, although it is kind of unrelated to REPCONN, but I thought it was really cool, and basically the Legion keeps giving you caps to fight for them. Now, before diving into REPCONN itself, there are a lot of surrounding buildings. On the outside, we have 3 buildings, although we do not know what they were used for, but definitely attached to the REPCONN facility. It is in the same property, but we really don't know what they're for. And then near the highway, there is a gas station, but it is inaccessible to the player, so it's just there for aesthetic. Then on the north side of REPCONN Headquarters, we have the railroad, and this railroad indicates that it was probably used somewhat for passenger transportation. And here we have a railroad crossing, and if we head down, we can actually find a playground with all kinds of playground equipment. So I'm wondering if those buildings that we saw earlier were used as some sort of daycare for the children of employees that worked at REPCONN. Then inside of the train station here, we can find a waiting room and then some cash registers. Again, this indicates that the railroad is probably used somewhat for passenger transportation. However, I think it was mainly used for industry. And then at the cash register in the shelves below, we can find a lot of pre-war money, which is pretty valuable in New Vegas, especially when you get a lot of it. And then as we approach the building, you're going to find a lot of Mr. Handies on the outside, basically just maintenance robots, and they are not hostile to the player, and they are, of course, peaceful, unless otherwise provoked. Then upon entering REPCONN Headquarters for the first time, you'll be greeted by a tour guide who will offer to give you a tour of the facility. If you want to watch the tour in full, I will put it at the end of the video, but it is recommended to go on the tour because the tour guide will unlock a door for you, and you don't have to risk the robots becoming hostile when picking that door. Now, at the entrance of REPCONN Headquarters, you're going to find a lot of dead fiends. I imagine they were probably killed by the Mr. Handies. Then there are 2 bathrooms, and there's nothing really inside of the bathrooms. And I did want to mention that the reason there are so many robots within REPCONN Headquarters is, of course, the parent company is ROPCO, which produced robots. Then in the next room, we just have some displays and the gift shop. Inside of the gift shop, we can find some bottle caps and a Star Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle cap. Now, there's going to be a hard locked door, which I could not pick on this character. However, on my main account, I can pick the lock, and I already have. And inside the locked room, we can find 2 nuke-cola victories, 2 nuke-cola quartz, and a big book of science, which will increase your science skill by 3. So some pretty darn good loot if you have 75 lockpick. There's also a safe with some more minor loot inside of it. Now, normally the planetarium is locked. However, again, if you go on the tour with a tour guide, it will be unlocked for you. Then in the planetarium, we can find a maintenance closet. And if we go to the back of the closet, we can find a key card called Jenny Millet's security key card. And this will allow you to bypass the security robots up to the second floor. So it's pretty useful. Now, from here, in order to access most of the facility, you will need 50 lockpick or 50 science. The door I just opened requires 50 lockpick or 50 science on the terminal next to it. Now, there's a lot of locked terminals within REPCONN Headquarters, and these terminals detail two things. One is the acquisition by ROPCO, and the other is leaks of the Q-35, which is the plasma rifle inside, to REPCONN's competitor, Poseidon Energy. Now, in this next little room, we can find a lot of ammunition. However, I had already cleared it out at the beginning of my playthrough, so there was just some leftovers for me, but you can find a ton of microfusion cells in this area. Next to this computer, we can find another star bottle cap, which is, of course, pretty good. There are 5-star bottle caps within this facility. Here we can see a robot asking for my identity, and since we got that security card earlier, it is okay. Upon entering the second floor, you might be confronted by some kind of robot asking you for a security check. Now, you can either obviously fight the robot, which is not recommended, or you can try and get past him. Now, beside this terminal is a copy of Nikola Tesla and you, and this easily locked terminal will allow us to add our facial data to the database, giving you security clearance for the second floor. So from here on out, you are safe. Now, it's advised to not set off the security alarm because it will spawn sentry bots, which can be very difficult, especially for a lower level. Now, there are a lot of robots, so if you have the pulse gun like I do on this playthrough, it is very easy to take out the enemies within this facility. So I started killing them simply for the free XP. In this room, we can find another Sunset Sarsaparilla Star bottle cap, along with the second floor security card. But besides that, there is not a whole lot of loot on this floor. So moving on to the third floor, which is kind of like the final area before you can get the Q-35 plasma rifle. Now, immediately on this floor, you're going to find this double-doored room with a very large desk. And in this room, next to the bookshelf, we can find another star bottle cap. So, pretty good, especially if you need them. And there's also a safe in this room, and we can loot it for some decent loot. And this safe can also be opened with this easy locked terminal. And also on this terminal, we can find some more information about the acquisition by ROPCO back in 2075. Now, on this floor, we can find a briefcase, and inside of this briefcase is going to be a lot of pre-war money, so that's always going to be pretty good. Now, this is Piers Easley's briefcase, and he's an important character during the acquisition. And then we can also find some Brotherhood of Steel paladins, and that is important for the Brotherhood quest. And then in this back room, or this main executive office, we can find yet another star bottle cap, along with a very hard lock terminal, and we'll explore more about that terminal later on. Then if we go through this door and head down and go to our right, and then go to the door on our left, we can now use our newly acquired key in order to access the Q-35. Now, this gun is very good, and you can find a lot of information about the testing of it on the terminals inside of this facility. And also within this room, we can find a copy of Nikola Tesla and you, some microfusion cells, and a safe with some minor loot inside of it, and a first aid box with some random healing items inside of it. So this place has some really incredible loot, especially if you're an early player with at least 50 lockpick or 50 science. It is possible to navigate this place. Now, one thing I wanted to cover are these hidden doors. There are 12 of them throughout the facility. But in order to find these hidden doors, you need at least 8 perception and then 65 repair to disable them. These hidden doors are actually where the sentry bots come out of. and you can follow my video here to find them for yourself. Disabling each door will grant you 50 XP, so a decent amount of XP that is really easy to get. And a big reason why these hidden doors exist and why security is so tight in this facility is that when the company was acquired by REPCONN Industries, the entire building was overhauled and security was heavily increased. And the reason they did this was REPCONN was expected to handle defense contracts, and they wanted to use REPCONN to take on some defense contracts from the Department of Defense, so they had to handle classified research. And basically, if you set off the alarm within this building, sentry bots will spawn and it will make your life hell. So it is recommended to either not set off the alarm or to at the very least jam these doors before doing so. But of course, if you're a higher level, maybe the sentry bots are not too big of an issue. It might even be a benefit as they would provide a lot of XP. So these hidden doors are littered throughout the REPCONN headquarters, and I tried to show the most direct path to get all of them quickly in case you came here as a lower level and didn't get the doors then. Of course, I think having 8 perception is not so common in Fallout, just because perception is not the most useful special skill. So it's definitely going to be more of a late game thing in order to find these doors. Probably not something you're going to do in the early game. And on top of that, and just beyond finding them, you need 65 lockpick to jam them. And then as we reach the 3rd floor, I wanted to talk about some of the people involved with REPCONN and some of the information on the terminals. So REPCONN was developing the Q-35 because it was going to replace the previous plasma weapon within the US military. Now, originally, Poseidon Energy, REPCONN's competitor, was developing the gun, but REPCONN actually stole the schematics and developed their own. However, Poseidon Energy actually had their own plan to get that back. And that plan was by using Julia Masters, the CFO of REPCONN, who was actually a mole for Poseidon Energy. Julia Masters was tasked with intercepting the Q-35 prototype and then delivering it to Poseidon. However, this never happened because the Great War happened before Julia could interrupt the delivery. And, fun fact, Julia Masters can actually be seen in the Fallout TV show during the Vault-Tec meeting. She is the one representing REPCONN. Now, as far as REPCONN's acquisition of REPCONN, there are 3 important characters to understand. The first is Leonard Steeple. Leonard Steeple was the former vice president of REPCONN. Then there is Piers Isley. Isley was the former general manager of REPCONN, and as we mentioned before, Julia Masters, who was the chief financial officer. Basically, Leonard Steeple, the former vice president, did not want to sell his company, REPCONN, to REPCONN because he believed that REPCONN should be focused purely on science and that it should not be handling defense contracts. It should not be associated with the US military. However, Piers Isley had little commitment to REPCONN and really just wanted to make money. He was an advocate for Poseidon Energy to buy out REPCONN, and then he was the one that helped REPCONN purchase REPCONN. And actually, when REPCONN became interested in buying REPCONN, Julia betrayed Leonard, and he did not know that Julia was working together with Piers in order to push the REPCONN deal. So a lot of corporate espionage and behind-the-scenes shenanigans for REPCONN and REPCONN and Poseidon Energy. So all kinds of interesting shenanigans going on here that definitely have connections to Mr. House and possibly the Fallout TV show. And there you have it, REPCONN Headquarters. I hope you guys were able to learn something about the actual location or some of its pre-war history in this video, and I hope you enjoyed. Also, an apology to Josh for this video taking so long to come out. I am truly sorry. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comments section below. Now, as I said before, this video will have a bit of an epilogue. If you want to listen to the tour of REPCONN HQ, please stay tuned, but if not, I completely understand, and until next time.
Ready for the REPCONN tour, Rocketeers? Courtesy of the fine folks at ROPCO, I'll be your guide today on the path of scientific discovery. In the lead-lined case behind me is a spent radioactive rod from one of our old reactors. No need to stand too close. Let's move along, shall we? Look here, a row of multicolored plasma fuels. Careful, they may look safe to drink, but your stomach is the last place they should be. Why the difference in cylinder size? Refining our production methods has resulted in higher yields of fuel over time. That's why. To my right, you can see a sample of some old safety barrels REPCONN once used to store radioactive waste. Perfectly safe. On my left is an example of a mountain of REPCONN safety barrels some legislators claim are poisoning our environment. Ridiculous. Behind me is our most recent rocket project, which we're keeping under our hats until launch, if you'll pardon the expression. And in front of me is a model, not actual size, of the launch dome we are using to send our rockets screaming into orbit. Now these colorful fellows behind me are REPCONN's earliest experiments in flight. Feel free to read the plaques and learn, Rocketeers. Now for the highlight of our tour. Due to a generous donation from ROPCO, this next exhibit showcases the wondrous world of robots. Around you are the incredible iBot, the fearsome SentryBot, and the always helpful Mr. Handy. That helpfulness runs through our whole line. This is the final stop on our tour. This model of our solar system is a small example of where the partnership between ROPCO and REPCONN hopes to go. See those little rockets zipping about? They are manned by robots, tirelessly looking for resources to mine on planets beyond our own. And that's it for our tour today, Rocketeers. ROPCO and its tiny partner, REPCONN, thank you. Any further questions? Please, feel free to ask.
Hello everybody, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at the Gun Runners. Now the Gun Runners might be one of the most visited locations within Fallout New Vegas, so definitely not somewhere that is very unique or unexplored. However, there are some interesting things about this location, information-wise, and also during the quest you can depend on me. We are tasked with infiltrating the Gun Runners in order to steal some information, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to go ahead and explore the Gun Runners for a video. So the Gun Runners are one of the largest companies or businesses within the post-apocalypse. They deal obviously in creating and selling weapons, and they are the single biggest supplier of weapons and ammunition to the NCR. The Gun Runners are not just in New Vegas, but they are also within the NCR territory. The Gun Runners we see in Fallout New Vegas are simply the Mojave branch of their organization. So let's go ahead and jump into the Gun Runners. While I doubt you need it, Gun Runners is located in the center of the map, right next to the Freeside East entrance. So when you first arrive at the Gun Runners, you're just going to find Isaac, who's the man on my right, working on guns, or just working at the workbench, honestly. And then the vendor Tron, who is the person, or the robot, I should say, that will sell you all the weapons and ammunition. Now, of course, the Gun Runners have some very amazing weapons, but they will come at a premium cost. And then vendor Tron has some interesting information about the Gun Runners.
This is the New Vegas branch of the Gun Runners, supplying the wasteland with only the finest armaments since 2155. All Gun Runner merchandise is constructed on site. This kiosk was specially constructed around me to deter theft and assault.
And for many players, that's where their experience with the Gun Runners ends. But here on the Unexplored Mojave, we like to push the envelopes and, of course, break the law. Now, upon entering the gun runners, Rex went berserk immediately, and he just flat out killed the gun runners, which, of course, if you've played through the quest, you can depend on me. Having gun runners being killed is no bueno, so I decided to reload the save, and this time without Rex, we can successfully infiltrate the gun runners. So once inside the gun runners, you can obviously go wherever you want as long as you are hidden. I used a stealth boy to make my life a lot easier. However, if you are seen or they catch you, you will become an enemy instantly and they will try to kill you. And then we can download the data for the quest, of course, and there's also a very funny terminal entry which reads, "One of the Crimson Caravan guards, identified as Robert Wilson, decided it would be funny to take a shot at our Vendertron. He's lucky he didn't get a 308 through his idiot skull. We're currently negotiating with McLafferty for reparations. But in the meantime, we need to update the Vendertron's recognition software to filter out all Crimson Caravan employees. We'll also need to pull some strings over at McCarran and get them temporarily barred from purchasing ammo there as well." So obviously here we can see some of the hostility between the gun runners and the Crimson Caravan, and this hostility is actually quite funny. Somebody was shooting at the Vendertron, who is very well protected in his little vendor box. But besides for the data we need to collect, there isn't a whole lot of loot inside, but I will go ahead and walk through and see the rest of the area. It's really just a living quarters for the gun runner workers. Now the people inside working on the firearms, their character image is actually based on the classical cast of Mythbusters: Adam Savage, Jamie Hyneman, and Carrie Byron. So some interesting Easter eggs in Fallout New Vegas. Perhaps the developers were big fans of Mythbusters. I vaguely remember Mythbusters on Discovery Channel as a child. However, I was never someone who actually watched it very often. And then outside we can find some destroyed buildings, but there isn't a whole lot in the surrounding area. And to the south, of course, is the NCR Sharecropper Farms. And there you have it, the gun runners. I hope you guys were able to learn something during the course of this video. And what do you think of the gun runners? Are they your main supplier of weapons and ammo? Let me know in the comments section below, as long as with who you think the best vendor in Fallout New Vegas is. As always, thank you guys really so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any recommendations for the next episode, please leave it in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Charleston Cave. This is a location very close to Jacobstown. Now, in my past video, Jacobstown, I briefly mentioned Charleston Cave, and I showed off some of the surrounding area. However, I didn't go inside of the cave. And a big reason for this is I figured most people will have visited this location because of the quest, Guess Who I Saw Today?, which is the quest with Rex and obviously the Nightkin at Jacobstown trying to help them out. But I found out that there's actually something hidden within Charleston Cave that I had no prior knowledge of, so I wanted to make a video about it and also explore the cave a little bit. So let's check out Charleston Cave. So obviously Charleston Cave is located in the far northwestern corner of the map. It's kind of up on a mountain, so it's a little bit of a hike to get to, and obviously it's snowy around the cave, which is unique for Fallout. Outside of the cave is a hollowed out rock indicated by the heart, and I found some ammunition inside of it. What will you find? Then once you enter the cave, there's like a little fork in the road, but truthfully it only goes right. The left way is a dead end. And then we find a skeleton and some mattresses with blood on them, and also like these little lights surrounding this main pillar. But not a whole lot in here. Now, if you come here for the first time, you're going to have to fight a lot of Night Stalkers. Then there's a big central chamber if you go right, and that's the path I decided to take, because if you go right, eventually you'll come into this secondary chamber where we can find a dead Nightkin along with a unique sledgehammer called Oh Baby. Now, the big horners are not hostile to you, so there's no need to attack them. If you continue further into the cave, there's going to be a little pond, and this is what I had no clue existed. So I always thought this pond was just the bottom and it was a loop, but there's actually a little room or bunker at the bottom of this cave, and it's behind a hard lock, so you have to have 75 lockpick to access this room, but this is essentially a home-built fallout shelter. And there's various loot within the room, including ammunition and a hunting shotgun that is in really good condition and is worth a lot of caps. So a really good find. We also have some pre-war money, some healing items, and a holotape. Now this holotape details a very dark survivor in the days immediately following the Great War. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
So the Reds finally hit us, just like I always said they would. Vegas is still there as far as I know, but that probably won't last long. Didn't get accepted into one of the vaults, so I did the next best thing and had this place built. Got massive debts, but who cares now? That's every man for himself now. Had to take care of the Paulson boy since he knew about this place. These supplies are for me and nobody else. There's a woman and her daughter up in one of the rooms of the lodge. Might go pay him a visit tomorrow. The man's got needs.
So obviously this man murdered another young man because he knew about his little shelter, and then he talked about two women, a mother and daughter, who had entered the cave, and it sounds like he had plans to exploit them. However, we don't know what happened between him and these women. However, the dead body at the top of the cave could be assumed to be his or the body of one of the women. But besides that, that is pretty much all for Charleston Cave. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you guys knew about this fallout shelter, what do you think of it? It's a very dark holotape within Fallout New Vegas. If you guys have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. Always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Crimson Caravan Company, located just east of Freeside in Fallout New Vegas. And this location was recommended to me by Butterball33. I apologize for taking so long to get to this location. I really wanted to do it, but I just kept putting it off, so that's my fault. This is a pretty important location as it is home to the Crimson Caravan. The Crimson Caravan is one of, if not the largest merchant company within the western United States, and I can't think of anything in the eastern United States that could rival the Crimson Caravan. Their main competitors include the gun runners, the Fargo traders, and the water merchants. However, the Fargo traders and water merchants were way back in 2161, and they're not mentioned in Fallout New Vegas, so we don't know if they still exist or not. So by the time of Fallout New Vegas, at least, their biggest competitor appears to be the gun runners. The Crimson Caravan Company was established in 2151 by Dimitri Womera and Carrie Lee, making the Crimson Caravan well over 100 years old by the events of Fallout New Vegas. So a pretty important faction within the Fallout universe. The Crimson Caravan Company is a major asset to the logistics of the NCR. They have trade routes to almost every single major NCR city, including as far away as New Vegas. So there's no doubt that this company is indispensable for the NCR. However, as we can see in Fallout New Vegas, sometimes the Crimson Caravan Company might employ some dirty business tactics, but that is part of the reason they are so successful and why they have such a good image for people within the Wasteland. So let's check out the Crimson Caravan Company in Fallout New Vegas. And then on my Pip-Boy, Crimson Caravan Company is literally just to the east of Freeside, almost in line with the New Vegas Strip. And in the first quest in the game, when you have to choose between the Powder Gangers and Good Springs, if you side with Good Springs and Ringo, Ringo will make his way back here to the Crimson Caravan Company, and if you talk to him again, he mentions that he is making his way towards New Cannon, and that he wants to open up a trade route along that path since none exist at this time. Then beside Ringo, we can find Blake, and Blake is the main merchant here, and he has a lot of caps, so if you need to sell items, this is a good place to do it. Then over here in like this small little courtyard area, we have a fire pit along with a lot of benches and tables. So obviously a place where a lot of merchants and guards would be eating or enjoying their time. There's also a husbandry on the other side of the facility. And then over on the northwest side, there's a lone pack Brahmin for whatever reason, and a water tower, and there's actually some Brock flower growing underneath the water tower. Then most of the buildings are just barracks, but the main office has Alice McLafferty. And McLafferty is the leader of the New Vegas branch, and then we can get a lot of quests from her, which obviously will reward the player with caps, and it can reward us with NCR fame, since the Crimson Caravan is so closely aligned with the NCR. If you enter the Crimson Caravan company with, like, Legion armor on, they will attack you, because they're enemies with the Legion. For the first quest, McLafferty will task us with visiting Dr. Hildern in Camp McCarran, and giving him a message. Upon doing that, we can gain her trust to do more dangerous jobs. She gives us 3 jobs to do, one of which is to convince Henry Jamison to quit his position at Crimson Caravan. One is to negotiate with Cassidy, or Cass, to buy out Cassidy Caravan. And one is to infiltrate the gun runners and to steal their schematics. First, I decided to go to Cass because I wanted to recruit her as my companion. So upon talking to her, you have to convince her to sell Cassidy Caravans to Crimson Caravan because she doesn't want to at first. And then we have to go talk to an NCR Ranger because she needs to clear her name, Ranger Jackson, and he'll give us a small side quest in order to make him happy. And honestly, I had no recollection of this quest. Can you find it in your heart? So I decided to go ahead and show it. It's located near the Nipton Road rest stop. And basically you have to kill some ants. And I also got attacked by some legionary assassins. So they actually killed a lot of the ants for me, so that was quite nice of them. Then after killing the assassin, I took out the rest of the ants. And it was a very simple quest and a good amount of XP. I had no recollection of that, and I thought the area was a bit interesting, being an old pre-war highway junction. After that, I could recruit Cass, and I made my way to the Atomic Wrangler in Freeside in order to confront Henry. Henry is the son of some powerful parents back in California, so you have to convince him to leave his position at the Crimson Caravan, because he's just kind of a waste of space, and he's wasting his life on drugs, alcohol, and prostitutes within New Vegas. And finally, as you might have seen in the previous episode of the Unexplored Mojave, we have to infiltrate the gun runners in order to steal schematics. Now, this was optional, but I decided to go ahead and do it because I wanted to feature the gun runners in this series anyway. So here you can see, sped up really, really fast, and then to the gun runner terminal, and then we just steal the specifications. Now, upon returning to the Crimson Caravan Company, we will get a handsome reward for all of our efforts, along with some NCR fame. Now, Alice McLafferty and Cass have some bad blood, and you can choose to have a campaign of vengeance by killing Alice for Cass or with Cass. However, I'd recommend completing the Crimson Caravan quest line before doing that, as you can get some really good XP and good rewards by doing so. And the next task she will give us is we have to go to the Sunset Sarsaparilla Headquarters to stop some cap counterfeiting. But I think that's an episode for a different day. But on the east end of the Crimson Caravan Company, we can find the New Vegas Medical Clinic. And I just wasn't sure when I would talk about this next. It has a cute sign posted outside. And inside we can get some really good medical supplies along with implants. Implants are very valuable because they can give you special abilities or increase your special stats. However, I have all of the implants I can get at this point, but I just wanted to go ahead and show that it is here. And there you have it, the Crimson Caravan Company. I hope you're able to learn something during this video. Now, there's a lot of quests associated with Crimson Caravans. However, I thought You Can Depend on Me was the best to kind of showcase the location along with Alice McLafferty as far as what the Crimson Caravan is all about. So, thank you guys so much for watching and all of the support in recent months. And a big shout out to Butterball33. I apologize for making you wait so long for this video. As always, if you guys have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comment section below. And until next time.
You want to hear the story of the great Khans? It's a long one, full of honor, glory, and betrayal. We have suffered, but we will regain our glory. The great Khans came east, out of the NCR 14 years ago. We ruled the wastes then, and called no man master. But we underestimated the families of the Strip, and they drove us back to Bitter Springs, where we remained until the NCR arrived and drove us here. They allied with Mr. House, the self-proclaimed master of New Vegas. He supported them with the resources of New Vegas. Weapons, technology, caps. They were better equipped, and we could not stand against them. When the NCR came to the Mojave, we thought they would be easy pickings. We raided their caravans, their towns, their camps. They couldn't stop us. At least that's what we thought. They tracked us to Bitter Springs and surrounded us. When our children, our sick and old, fled through a nearby pass, the NCR gunned them down. Oh, they claimed it was a miscommunication, but tell that to those who saw our families butchered. Tell it to the survivors who were banished here.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. You were just listening to Papa Khan talking about some of the history of the Great Khans. Today we are checking out Red Rock Canyon, which was recommended to me by Wesley Gassett. So thank you so much for the recommendations, Wesley. So Red Rock Canyon, as we mentioned, is home to the Great Khans. So there's a lot of people within this area. Now the Great Khans are very important to the main story, as you want to try and get them on your side to support you for the Battle of Hoover Dam, or of course you can kill off their leadership, leaving them in disarray. So let's check out Red Rock Canyon. Red Rock Canyon is located just north of Good Springs, of course. In early game though, this would be a difficult location to reach because of all the cazadores between here and Good Springs. Now on top of this little hill you can find a longhouse, and inside of this place is where we find Papa Khan, who is the leader of the Great Khans and who you are listening to at the beginning of this video. Now next to Papa Khan are Regis and Carl, who are sort of his advisors. Regis is more sympathetic towards the NCR, despite the bad blood between the Great Khans and NCR, and then Carl is more sympathetic towards the Legion. So while you're trying to pick which side to obviously fight for, these two will play an important role. Outside of the longhouse and scattered around Red Rock Canyon, we can find these kind of tents. Now most of these tents are not accessible for the player, but some of them are open, like this one where we can find some skill magazines and a bloodied NCR flag. Inside of the cabinet, there's not much loot. Obviously, these people are more poor. Now, up on the mountain there, you can actually see a bit of a pass, and that path on the right will actually take you all the way to Jacobstown. And I made a video on that in the past, but I just wanted to go ahead and point it out again because it's something I had no clue existed, even though I've played this game for so long. To access the pass, though, from this part, Red Rock Canyon, you're going to have to use some glitches, kind of jumping and glitching your way up the slope. And towards the center of Red Rock Canyon is the fighting arena, and outside we can find Jerry the Punk. This will start the quest, Cry Me a River, because Jerry actually does not like living here, and he wants to join the followers of the apocalypse and to be a poet. Inside of this little fighting arena, we can see several Great Khans practicing their combat skills. Now, roaming around the Red Rock Canyon, you can find Jessup, along with the other Great Khans that you could have saved during their holdout against the NCR. But, of course, you could also choose to kill them, or if you have a bad ending with them, they might actually attack you upon visiting Red Rock Canyon, turning the other Great Khans against you. So please be aware of that if you had a bad ending with the NCR standoff with Jessup and his men. Towards the back of the canyon then we can find the Red Rock Drug Lab, where we have Jack and Diane, who pretty much are the drug dealers for the Great Khans. They make a lot of product, but I found it really funny because you can convince Jack to start making good chems.
Oh, you're right. I should start a side project making meds to keep my aura clean.
And these two do have a marked quest associated with them, Abba Dabba Honeymoon, which you have to do some drug dealing for them. But besides that, there's not a whole lot back here besides a lot of beds. Also, inside of this trailer, we can find flour. However, the flour is in quotation marks, and there is no flour in Fallout New Vegas, so I wonder what this product actually is, if it's some kind of drug perhaps. So some quick fun facts about the Great Khans. Now, there is the Great Khan Armory, which we explored in a previous episode of the Unexplored Mojave, which has arguably the best weapon and ammo supply in the Mojave Wasteland. Also, like several other locations within Fallout New Vegas, Red Rock Canyon is based on the real-world Red Rock Canyon Conservation Area. This place is located just west of New Vegas, just like in the video game, and is a very beautiful nature preserve. So if you ever get the chance to visit Las Vegas, highly recommend you go check it out because it looks absolutely beautiful. Albeit I've never been there myself, but I would like to visit. Alright guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always...
Until next time.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave, the Army of Otters here. And today we're going to be looking at the NCR CF, otherwise known as the NCR Correctional Facility, otherwise known as the New California Republic Correctional Facility. And this video was recommended to me by Little Dre, so as always, thank you so much for the support, Little Dre. So, as the name would imply, this prison is controlled by the NCR, or I should say was controlled by the NCR, because now it's controlled by the Powder Gangers. When the NCR expanded east and moved into the Mojave Wasteland, they needed a way to keep their supply lines going, and they primarily used the railroads. So they garrisoned this old prison, and by the late 2270s, the New California Republic began sending its prison population east, forcing the convicts to work setting up railroads and using dynamite to blow away obstructions. This is why the Powder Gangers have so much dynamite. However, as I just said, the NCR Correctional Facility used to belong to the NCR, but at the beginning of Fallout New Vegas, it belongs to the Powder Gangers. And the reason for this was, as the NCR continued its war effort against Caesar, it led to a dwindling body count among the faculty at the NCR CF. And eventually, the anarchist Samuel Cook staged a breakout around 2281, overthrowing the prison staff and killing them, and then taking control of the prison. After that, Eddie was put in charge of the prison, and Samuel Cook moved to Vault 19. And then during the quest, I Fought the Law, you can either choose to assist the Powder Gangers against the NCR, or you can choose to assist the NCR in taking back the prison. Now, it's not such an easy decision because once you dive more and more into the correctional facility, you can kind of see that the NCR was using it as a form of slave labor. The labor that they were getting out of here was very high, and they gave no compensation. Of course, the people inside were prisoners, but there's obviously a moral dilemma here that it's up for you, the player, to decide. So let's check out the NCR Correctional Facility. So here you can see the location of the NCR CF on the Pip-Boy, located just east of Good Springs and south of Sloan, northeast of Prim. Now, I wanted to cover some of the surrounding area around the prison. Now, in a previous video, I talked about the Powder Ganger camp, so we'll be looking a little bit closer. On the southern end of the prison, we can find a pair of bones, probably belonging to Brahmin and a human, 2 humans, along with a pack of coyotes nearby. So perhaps the coyotes were having a snack, or perhaps it's completely unrelated. Who knows? Now, further down, we can find a skeleton that appears to have been shot in the head, probably by a sniper. Perhaps it was killed by NCR a long time ago, or it might be more recent. Then towards the entrance, we can find a pair of signs that are kind of interesting. These are special signs within Fallout. This one reads, "Please do not stand when shots are fired." Obviously a pre-war sign. And a little bit further down, we can find a sign which reads, "No trespassing. Prison area. Violators will be prosecuted." And then even further down, we can find a sign that says, "Absolutely no entry. Trespassers will be prosecuted." So these are all clearly pre-war signs, and I have to admit, this prison's in pretty good shape for being, 200 years since the Great War. Then outside the entrance, we can find some campers Not sure what these are for or why they're here. Perhaps they were used by the NCR or the US military before the war. Who knows, but they are here, and they do provide a bed for you to sleep in. Further down, we can find some handrail cars, and these were probably used by the NCR in order to get the prisoners to work on the railroad. Also, you have to be careful when walking around this area, as there are a lot of powder mines. Further down, we can find an exploded body, or what I assume is an exploded body, along with some Brahmin bones. And then along the road, we can find one of my favorite signs in Fallout, which says, "Notice, hitchhikers may be escaped prisoners." And the reason I love this sign is because the person on the sign is actually Vault Boy from the Cannibal perk in Fallout New Vegas, just dressed in a black and white shirt, obviously prisoner clothes. And then even further up, we can find a sign which reads, "Prison Chain Gang Ahead." So some pretty interesting signage, and finally another one of those hitchhiker signs. Apparently there are 7 of them along the roadway. Clearly these are from the pre-war era. Then also outside the prison we can find a billboard advertising the Atomic V8. I just thought it was quite humorous that there would be a commercial billboard right outside a prison, but it is near a highway, and so I guess it makes sense. And then as we approach the prison, sometimes when you fast travel here, coyotes or wild dogs will spawn, and if you don't have the animal friend perk, they will attack you. So here I killed the dog, which is a little bit sad, but hey, I didn't have a choice. Upon entering the visitor center, there will usually be a lot of powder gangers in here. However, I helped the NCR take it back, so they're all dead. On the counter, you can find a Star Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle cap, but there isn't a whole lot of other loot inside the visitor center. In the courtyard area, we can find a lot of the evidence from the hard labor that the NCR was forcing these prisoners to go through. We can find a lot of mine carts, handrail cars, along with a lot of outhouses that appear to be in very poor condition. And again, just lots of mine carts indicating the labor that these prisoners were doing, primarily working and expanding the railroad so the NCR could keep its supply line going. Then we can find the prisoner cell block, A and B. These cell blocks are accurately named with the last names of the prisoners, A through J, and then K through Z. So obviously this was pre-war era. Inside there were still some powder gangers who were still alive, and thankfully Cass took them out for me. Now in prisoner block B, we can actually get some good loot. In this ammunition box, there was almost 200 caps, 173, which would be really good for a low-level player, along with the schematics for a powder charge. And inside prisoner block A, there isn't a whole lot, but you can actually steal some ammunition, some medical supplies, and some armor, powder ganger armor, if you're interested in it or if you're in the early game. But really not a lot in here. Now, if you've noticed, the alarm, the prison alarm is blaring as soon as I enter the prison. And if you help the NCR during the quest I Fought the Law, this alarm will forever be blaring and it will never stop. Over by the administration building, we can find a water pump. However, the water is very irradiated, hinting towards the very poor conditions that the prisoners had to work through. I'm surprised some of them weren't ghouls. And then within the administration building, you would normally find Eddie. However, of course, I helped the NCR, so Eddie is now dead, and it's now occupied by NCR troops. On the top floor, you can find a copy of Lying Congressional Style, so obviously pick that up. I picked up that skill book a long time ago in this playthrough, so unfortunately I don't have any footage of it, but it's located in the room with all of the filing cabinets. And then upstairs we can find the Warden's Terminal, and on this terminal we can learn a lot about the NCR. Basically, this terminal tells us about how the Warden knew he did not have the men to properly secure the prison, and that he was really afraid of an uprising that would result in his death and all of his men's death. He also talks about Samuel Cook and how a lot of the younger prisoners were taking a liking to him and his anti-NCR dogma. Of course, Cook is an anarchist, and he is the one that led the uprising against the NCR. And real quick, I wanted to mention that if you just kill all of the powder gangers without doing the quest I Fought the Law, usually a prospector will move into the prison. So kind of interesting. But if you help the NCR, there's no prospector. Now, I want to talk about the real-life equivalent, because like many locations in Fallout New Vegas, The NCR Correctional Facility is based on the real-world Southern Nevada Correctional Center. This is an abandoned men's prison in Jean, Nevada. Jean is a town that's close to Good Springs, and in Fallout New Vegas, we can find Jean's Skydiving, which is also near the prison and is a real skydiving company in real life. Now, this prison was closed in 2000 before being reopened in 2006 and then closed again in 2008. However, since then, there's been a lot of debate about reopening the prison. But there is not a lot about this prison on the internet. There is one picture I could find, and then on Google Maps, I could pull some images from the street view and satellite imagery, as you can see now. Now, I was really surprised to find that there is a lone Starbucks out here in the middle of nowhere in Jean, Nevada. However, this is on the road towards Las Vegas, so I guess it makes sense. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention is actually the NCRCF being taken over by the Powder Ganger is why there are death claws in Quarry Junction. Basically, the Powder Gangers made it too dangerous for merchants to travel on that route to New Vegas, and as there were less people traveling, the death claws moved into Quarry Junction, obviously leading to the situation that we have now in Fallout New Vegas. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Poseidon Gas Station. This is a marked location within the Mojave Wasteland, just almost directly east of Red Rock Canyon, northeast of Chance's map. Now, I've discovered this location before during this playthrough of New Vegas, and I actually killed some of the fiends that are next door. However, I thought I'd go ahead and cover this location and also dive a bit into the history of the Poseidon Energy Company. So, let's check out the Poseidon Gas Station. And as you can see it here on the mini-map, the Poseidon Gas Station is just northeast of Chance's map, north of Nopa Cave, kind of in the center of the map on the western side. Now, this gas station, for whatever reason, is a highly irradiated. It was clearly used as some kind of dumping site. Perhaps the gas station was abandoned during the pre-war era, and it was turned into a dumping site as less and less cars use gas in favor of nuclear power. Now, there's really nothing inside of the gas station. You can tell it's been long abandoned and fallen into ruins. Now, nearby, we can find a bunch of fiends. However, I already killed the fiends, but these old campers and trailers are used by Violet and her gang of fiends. Violet is second in command of the fiends, so she's very important, and she's a part of the quest 3-card bounty, where you have to kill her and retrieve her head for the purpose of that quest. And as you saw earlier, while Violet and her fiends won't respond, her dogs will. Now, there's various loot located within these trailers, a lot of ammunition, and I even found a stealth boy in one of the ammunition boxes, along with a few skill magazines. Now, a lot of these trailers are barricaded off and you cannot enter. However, there are a couple that you can go inside, and interestingly enough, these actually have human flesh inside of them, along with baseballs, implying that the dogs here were fed human flesh, and the baseballs were, I would assume, toys, so that they could play with the fiends. But pretty vicious and cruel cycle going on at this trailer park. And inside this other trailer, we can just find a few beds, obviously used by the fiends. Now, if we head northwest of the Poseidon Gas Station, we can find some honey mesquite, along with a lone fire gecko. Now, this area is really remote. There is truly nothing over here, but I just thought it was kind of cool, kind of a nice, peaceful area underneath the full moon of the Mojave. And as I said earlier, I wanted to give some quick information about Poseidon Energy. Poseidon Energy was a very large pre-war company that had close ties to the Enclave. In fact, the Enclave oil rig in Fallout 2 was actually built by Poseidon. So obviously this company was kind of dark, kind of evil. They had a lot of really nefarious things going on behind the scenes. in order to rake in billions of dollars. And Poseidon was also responsible for developing Archimedes, which was a base defense system operated from Helios 1. That is that large orbital laser strike that still operates to this day using the Euclid C-Finder. So obviously this was a very large corporation with a lot of power in the pre-war world, and their power can continue to be demonstrated in the post-apocalypse. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for future videos, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the New Vegas Steel. This is a steel plant located near the South Vegas ruins. Now this video was kind of recommended to me by Vicista Idiot, who asked me to do more Fiend territory, which made me come down and explore this area and find this location. Now this location is pretty cool, it features some content, so let's jump into it. So as I just said, this is located near the South Vegas ruins, kind of in the middle of the map, near Camp McCarran. Now when you come here, there's going to be a lot of fiends, so make sure you're prepared for that. If you're a lower level, it could prove to be quite the challenge, but me and Cass were able to easily deal with any of the fiends. Now there is like a little railroad platform here. I assume it'd be for shipping off any goods produced by the steel plant. And there's a completely bombed out or destroyed building right next to the steel plant. Sometimes there's some fiends hiding in here, but really there's not much to this building. And with that, we can head inside of New Vegas Steel. And upon entering, you're going to be confronted by some Mr. Steel and crazed Mr. Handies, and we're led to believe that these Mr. Handies and Mr. Steels have been keeping this steel plant operational for over 200 years. Now these Mr. Steels can actually be quite difficult to kill. Even me as a high level, I found they still dealt a lot of damage and they had a good amount of health. So make sure you're prepared for a bit of a fight. Also, these guys will drop a lot of flamer fuel and some energy cells, so a good place to stock up on some ammo. We can find a terminal, and on it reads Lucky 38 Executive Override. And this is actually cut content. Originally, this is going to be a part of the quest. The moon comes over the tower, but that section of the quest was cut. So now we're just left with this terminal that has no actual effect on the Lucky 38, which is kind of unfortunate. Then we have a dead fiend and some skill books next to him, and on the shelves we can find a bunch of pre-war food, and also a Sunset Sarsaparilla Star bottle cap and a Patriot's cookbook. Obviously this place has not been touched much by humans as the Mr. Handy's continued operation. On the second floor we can find some ammunition, along with some ammunition crates, but besides that there really isn't a lot of loot up here, and this place is kind of barren once we've gotten all of that. However, I found this very amusing. The molten steel will kill you instantly on the top floor, and these hot pieces of steel will just damage the player slightly. So I was just kind of jumping around on them, having a good time, and I found it to be quite amusing. It actually took a long time for them to finally kill me, and I found once you've hit it once, it will no longer hurt you if you stay on the same one. And eventually it did kill me, and Cass seemed a bit too happy about my death. Not sure what she's up to. But anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video or the next location, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the West Pump Station, and this is a location I actually didn't know about. I did know about the East Pump Station, but when I was exploring New Vegas Steel, I discovered this place, and I didn't even know it existed, so here it is. But when you're in this area, be prepared for some fiends. As you can see here, I'm just trying to get a scenic shot, and this son of a gun just thought he could shoot me. And Casp, well, let me tell you, they thought wrong. So if you come here, definitely make sure to bring some weapons, maybe a companion with you, in order to help take out some of the fiends. But we do get some pretty cool and beautiful views of the highway, the pump station, and New Vegas in the background. But enough of that, let's check out West Pump Station. And here on the Pip-Boy, you can see the location of the West Pump Station, located just near Camp McCarran, south of the El Rey Motel. Also, I wanted to point out this highway. I've always thought this highway was really cool and an underused asset within New Vegas. It's just a really long stretch of road that's very narrow. I always wish there was something more with it, especially with the Fiends. Of course, there could have been more plans for it, but, you know, New Vegas was rushed. There's a lot of cut content. Anyways, here is the West Pump Station, and there's going to be a lot of Fiends in the surrounding area. Upon entering it, you're going to be attacked by another Fiend, and in the next room over, there will be even more Fiends for you to kill. Now, oddly enough, this place is still considered NCR territory, despite the fact the NCR clearly does not have really, well, firm control over this facility. Also, I accidentally shot Cass in the back there. My apologies, Cass. Upon killing all the Fiends, though, you're free to roam around and take the loot. However, the loot is considered stealing because, once again, this is NCR territory. And in fact, if you're with Cass and Boone, they will even remark that you are trespassing and that you should leave. So clearly that, you know, we're not supposed to be here, but it's okay that the Fiends are here. Also, there's a pump station terminal in here, and if you repair the network with 50 science, you can start the quest Hard Luck Blues, which is associated with Vault 34, one of my most hated places in Fallout. But that is basically the West Pump Station. I didn't really know this existed. I knew of the East Pump Station, and from the East Pump Station, you can also start Hard Luck Blues. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please drop them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at Nellis Air Force Base and all of the surrounding area. Now this is recommended to me by Wesley Gossett, so thank you so much for the recommendation, Wesley. And I think this is a really good location for the Unexplored Mojave, because while many players will visit Nellis Air Force Base because of the boomers, there's a lot going on in this place that is easily missed. So, real quick, the real-life equivalent of Nellis Air Force Base is, of course, Nellis Air Force Base. However, while most locations in Fallout New Vegas are geographically in the same area, Nellis Air Force Base is not as accurate as other locations in Fallout New Vegas. But it is a scaled-down, loosely based version of the real-life Nellis Air Force Base. And of course, within the world of Fallout, the Boomers have moved into Nellis Air Force Base. The Boomers are survivors from Vault 34 who took up positions within Nellis Air Force Base after they were forced to flee from Vault 34. And now they've become kind of xenophobic and they really distrust outsiders, but hey, who could blame them when you got whores in the nuclear wasteland? But the player character in the events of Fallout New Vegas can either kill the Boomers or get them to side with you. They are a pretty good faction to have on your side, as they will get a bomber operational and aid you in the Battle of Hoover Dam. And at the end of this video, I'll show the tour from the Boomers Museum of History, if you want to know more about the Boomers' history from the Boomers themselves. But for now, let's go ahead and check out Nellis Air Force Base. And I doubt you need it, but here on the Pip-Boy you can see the location of the Nellis Array, Nellis Hangars, and Nellis Air Force Base. As you can see, these areas are pretty far apart from each other, so this is a pretty big area. I want to compliment the game designers because the railroad actually goes into Nellis Air Force Base, and it is gated off. Here we can see a restricted area sign, and there's also other signs around here warning about military and their use of lethal force. However, we cannot open this gate for the railroad, but I just thought it was really cool. And then I wanted to show some of the surrounding area. So in front of the base is a residential area with a lot of destroyed houses. And we can assume the Boomers did this as people tried to approach the base. The Boomers just blew up everything, killing who knows how many people. And now it's just ruins. And this is kind of accurate to the real life Nellis Air Force Base, as there is a residential area right next to it. And of course, the first time you come to Nellis Air Force Base, the boomers will try to kill you. But after you have succeeded in getting here, you can obviously come whenever you want, as long as you're on good terms with them. And we can see the entrance is heavily fortified, and we have several boomers with missile launchers. And then I want to go over to the northeast, where we can find a farming area, and we can find barrels, and I assume what they are making here is fertilizer. And if we go further north, we can actually find a boomer equipped with a Fat Man. That's pretty freaking scary. And he also has 3 mini nukes on him, so if you want to try and pickpocket them or kill them for those mini nukes, that is up to you. And we can see they're growing what appears to be maize in this field. However, we cannot collect this maize or food or whatever they're growing. However, if we go north of the Nellis Boomer Museum, there are 102 maize which can be collected by the player. And also around Nellis Air Force Base, you will find trucks and all kinds of other military infrastructure that has long been abandoned. There's also some Mr. Handies wandering around that are now in service to the boomers. So they clearly know a lot about technology, not just explosives. Now, one thing I have to emphasize is this place is freaking huge. We have 2 full-length runways, and these are true runways, not like the walled-up areas we see at Camp McCarran. These runways could still be operational with some repairs. And around this Air Force Base, you're going to find a lot of artillery and a lot of trucks, as I mentioned before. Heading over to the Nellis satellite array, we can find a building that is associated with the quest Ant Misbehavin'. And during this quest, we can actually get a pretty rare and cool weapon, Thump Thump. This is located at the bottom to the left of the ant mound, and this is just a unique grenade rifle, and funny enough, this is actually named after the real-life nickname for the M79 grenade launcher, which was often referred to as Thumper by U.S. service members. And we can also find a plethora of ammunition and other explosives. There's also 1 Fat Man down here, and all of this is free for the player's taking, despite the fact that this building is owned by the boomers. So make sure to come down here and collect all of that ammunition. And then we have this slope, you saw me go through really fast, where I assume they would take up artillery shells. And then heading towards the end of the runway, we can find a watchtower that is actually manned by a boomer, so he's clearly keeping watch for any kind of would-be wrongdoers. However, he's not equipped with much, and I do think this position would be easy to overpower. Of course, you would have to deal with the boomer artillery first. And this part of the map is really barren. It's just 2 runways. I don't know if this was done on purpose because it is just 2 runways, or if there was going to be more content over in this part of the map, but it was ultimately cut from the game. Besides that, though, there isn't a whole lot out there, and we can head over to the Nellis hangars. Inside the first hangar, we can find a mess hall, along with a weapons vendor. Now, this munitions manager is really good. You can buy some explosives and weapons from him, and he also has a lot of caps if you're looking to sell. But this is just a really cool area, and there are so many boomers in this area. The boomers have a very big population compared to other population centers within Fallout New Vegas. And I just always love this part of the map, or this city, because it just feels very alive, and it feels very well fleshed out, unlike some other parts of Fallout New Vegas. And then up on the southern side of this hangar, we can find some flight simulators. However, unfortunately, we cannot use them. I really wonder if there were any plans for these to ever be accessible. And there's also some workbenches. Across from that hangar is the other hangar where we can find the bomber. Of course, this bomber is brought up by the player from the bottom of Lake Mead, and then the boomers will work on restoring it. Using these tires and tables over here, we can actually get on top of the boomer and take a closer look at it. We can see it has a turret on the top, and we can actually see inside the cockpit and some of the repairs that they've made to the plane. Obviously, at this point, the plane looks like it's in a lot better shape than when you raise it from the bottom of Lake Mead. Then we can look at some of the housing area. So here we have the museum. Again, I'll show a lot of this at the end of the video. However, we can find the Nellis Air Force Base snow globe inside the museum, which is free to take for the player. There's also the Nellis workshop, which is just as it would sound. It's just a workshop, and there is a bed which the player can use inside. Then we can find Loyal's house, and Loyal is the man who is primarily working on the bomber. It was his idea and his plan. And inside his housing area, we can find Dean's Electronics, which will increase your repair skill by 3, but it is considered stealing. And then we have the infirmary, where we have some injured boomers. I thought this text was kind of funny. Injured boomer is unconscious. Well, of course he is. But it is a very serious injury. And then we have a schoolhouse with a lot of children in here. And Nellis Air Force Base is home to the most children of any location in Fallout New Vegas. So obviously they are reproducing pretty fast. And then we have several buildings for the barracks. We have a female barracks, a male barracks, and a children's barracks. But they're all pretty much the same, and there isn't really anything in it. But for whatever reason, in the men's barracks, their pathing was a little messed up. And this one guy was running away to another building. And yeah, I don't know what was going on. And there's also a children's barracks, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't really know of any other location in Fallout New Vegas with like a children's area. But here we can see, and there's also a Giddy Up Buttercup Pony advertisement inside. And the final building we'll look at is Pearl's barracks. Obviously, Pearl is the leader of the boomers. Now, I didn't want to go too much into her, but inside this bookshelf, we can find a copy of Duck and Cover. This is one of the best hidden skill books within Fallout New Vegas, and that will increase your explosive skill by 3. Of course, what else would a boomer skill book give you? But it is stealing to take it. Alright guys, and there you have it, Nellis Air Force Base. A really cool and amazing location within Fallout New Vegas. The sheer scale of this base is pretty incredible, even if part of it is a little bit, barren. But besides that, Nellis Air Force Base and the Boomers are one of my favorite factions in Fallout New Vegas, if not my favorite faction. What do you think of the Boomers? Do you either support them or do you get rid of them in your Fallout New Vegas playthrough? I'd love to know in the comments section below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time.
Ages ago, long before I was born, we lived underground. Everyone had guns, but the Overseer wouldn't let us explode anything, not even a hand grenade. We left and wandered the wastes. There were savages with knives. We blew them up with frag mines and grenades, burned them with flamethrowers. It was neat, but there was a downside. For every 43.6 savages we killed, we lost one of our own. We needed a new home. We needed Nellis. Here we have prospered and multiplied. Here our mighty guns destroy any savages who might try to harm us before they can even reach our gates. Well, until... But... Not saying you want to harm us or you're a savage, but anyways. Nellis has revealed many secrets. It has taught us how to fly the bombers once based here, and it has taught us where to find one. And that is our story so far. For this last image is our future. To restore the bomber, to fly the open skies in armored safety, raining high explosive ordnance upon ignorant savages. This is our destiny. I'm pleased that you listened to the entire story. Perhaps there are details you'd like to know more about. Let me know.
Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Now, if you've played through Fallout New Vegas, you've probably seen graves across the Mojave Wasteland. And these graves are kind of scattered around the map, kind of somewhat randomly, but they're very noticeable, especially if you start paying attention. However, you might think there's a lot of them, but from the research I've done, there are only 44 in the Mojave Wasteland, not including the DLC. Within Old World Blues, there's also some graves, but in this video I just want to focus on the base game and the 44 graves within the Mojave Wasteland, and we're going to visit all of these graves. Now, this video was recommended to me by Ateon Shrudaloo 33. I hope I pronounced that right. I really like this idea, maybe doing similar videos like it, especially as we start nearing completion of the entire map in the unexplored Mojave. There are still some other things that we can play around with and explore. Now, a lot of these graves are in places we've already explored in the unexplored Mojave, so if you want to learn more about these locations, please check the description below for links to those videos. So, let's check out all of the graves of the Mojave Wasteland. Now, all of the graves in the Mojave Wasteland have loot, and usually it's just ammunition or maybe some weapons or armor, stuff like that. But if you want to loot these graves, you're going to need a shovel. Luckily for you, though, acquiring a shovel is extremely easy. If you just head on down to the Good Springs General Store, our good friend Chet will have a shovel which you can buy. It is considered a weapon, and this will allow you to loot all of the graves. It only costs 10 caps for me, but it might be more for you. So the first location, which is extremely famous, is Good Springs Cemetery. Obviously, this is where Benny shoots you and where you are dug up by Victor. Here we can find 5 graves, which we can dig up. Now, it's worth noting that some graves in Fallout New Vegas are not lootable, probably because they are old graves and we can only loot quote-unquote new graves. But there are 5 graves here that we can loot. This one here is fenced in, suggesting perhaps that it is very recent. But all of these graves will just contain some minor loot, ammunition, nothing huge, but good for a starting player. And then our next location is Nelson, or just east of Nelson, not actually in Nelson itself. Now, the first time you go to Nelson, it'll be a Legion-controlled town. However, you can assist the NCR in taking it back and putting it back in NCR hands. Anyways, just go east of Nelson towards the Colorado, and along the cliff you'll find the 3 graves. And our next location is the Whitaker Farmstead. This is located near Vault 19, just north of Quarry Junction. On a small farmstead, we can find 2 graves right next to each other. We can assume they were the previous owners, again with some pretty minor loot inside of them. And the next grave is on the east side of Scorpion Gulch, west of Helios 1. It's up this little ramp, and we can find a single grave underneath this cliffside. A really kind of cool and beautiful area. And our next grave is at Wolfhorn Ranch. This is a location just southwest of Novak, east of Nipton. Now, this is a kind of interesting location because Wolfhorn Ranch was originally going to be the home of Ulysses. However, Ulysses was cut from the final game, and they put this grave here to symbolize that character. However, they obviously brought back Ulysses in Lonesome Road. Also, oddly enough, this grave does not require a shovel to dig it up, so you can just dig it up however you want. And our next location is in the town of Novak, just behind the hotel. Right next to this house, we can find 2 graves. And again, like every other grave within Fallout New Vegas, they contain some pretty minor loot, nothing very special. But maybe somebody used to live in this house that now appears burnt down and abandoned. And then the next graves can be found at Yangtze Memorial. This is directly east of Good Springs. This is a very good location to get some loot early game. There's also a hollowed out rock with a peace symbol on it. We can find some burial mounds, which actually one of them had some really good loot, especially for an early playthrough, so you definitely might want to come check out this place if you're new to the game. Now, the next location is Tribal Village, and I had a really wild experience when I visited here. So I came here originally for an earlier episode of the Unexplored Mojave. However, when I spawned in, everybody was instantly revived. A lot of the guys only had 1 HP, and it was really easy to kill everyone. But there's a really wild glitch that happened as I came here. But besides the glitch, to the southeast of the Tribal Village, we can find Chance's grave, who was one of the people that assisted Benny in capturing you. And you can actually find Chance's knife here, which is a pretty decent melee weapon, so really good place to pick up a nice, special, unique melee weapon. And our next location is Bonnie Springs. This is directly north of Good Springs. Now, there will be cazadors here. However, the first time you visit this location will be inhabited by vipers. And after killing the vipers, then cazadors will move in and claim the area for themselves. And I learned while making this video that the Riot's shotgun is like god tier, maybe the best gun in the game. The Cazadors can't even touch you with this weapon, so would highly recommend. Then on the hill behind Bonnie Springs, we can find a lone grave. Kind of a very scenic area to be buried. And our next location is Blue Paradise Vacation Rentals, just south of Cottonwood Cove. And here I learned that Cass might be my favorite companion in Fallout New Vegas. Now, her and I were able to easily deal with all of these lake lurks. We both use shotguns, and I just felt like a complete badass. Then over here to the west, we have 2 unmarked graves overlooking the rentals and the Colorado River. And then the next location is the Mother Lode of Graves. It is Bitter Springs and is just west of the map marker. Now, if you're familiar with the lore, you would know why there are so many graves here, but there are 12 in total. Now, the reason there are so many graves here is that the NCR, by mistake, massacred a bunch of women and children belonging to the Great Khans. For a long time, the Great Khans and NCR were warring with each other. And then when the NCR attacked their main base, which used to be Bitter Springs, a lot of women and children were trying to flee. The NCR mistook them for soldiers and opened fire, and now we're left with a mass grave. And the next location is going to be the Mesquite Mountains campsite. Now, this location actually took me a while to find the graves. They are located west on the top of the mountain next to the campsite. Now, there's going to be a ton of rad scorpions here. There were way more rad scorpions than I ever remembered. In fact, there were close to maybe 10 or 15 of them I had to fight off. At the top of the mountain, we can find 3 graves that overlook the southwestern portion of the Mojave Wasteland. And you can also see Prim off in the distance. Kind of a very beautiful and one of my favorite areas within Fallout New Vegas. And the next location is the Matthews Animal Husbandry Farm. This is one of my favorite locations in Fallout New Vegas and is one of the first locations covered on the unexplored Mojave. We have 2 graves with a decent amount of loot in them, and these 2 graves actually have an extremely dark backstory. Won't go too much into it here, but I'd highly recommend checking it out because it's very cool. Definitely visit this location. And next is the Followers Safe House. This is located in the northwestern part of the map, and behind the safe house, actually, we can find 2 graves. So kind of weird or interesting how they're here. They were probably 2 followers who were killed, probably by Cazadors, because there's so many of them up here. And also you can actually get on top of the safe house, which I never realized before, and get some very excellent views of New Vegas. Now, this last grave may have been the most difficult one for me to find. It is located directly between Silver Peak Mine and Ruby Hill Mine, and it is guarded by 2 bighorners. And you can see the grave here with just some ammunition, so not really worth all my time. And here's a more detailed location of exactly where it is. Again, it's pretty much directly between these 2 mines, just off the road. But while I was exploring, I found this really bizarre area that I didn't know existed. I found this like little canyon between the mountains, and it opened up into this large valley just filled with bighorners. So I killed the bighorners because they're all hostile, and with Cass and the Riot shotgun, it was pretty easy. And then I found out you can climb to the top of the mountain here, which I thought was even more bizarre that this is even existing right now. I had no knowledge that this was real or that this was in the game, and there's really nothing back here. So I wonder if there was supposed to be more back here, but it was cut content. Obviously, New Vegas was rushed, and a lot of stuff was cut, but you can get a magnificent view of New Vegas and the surrounding area from up here. And wow, this is just amazing. We're over 150 episodes into the Unexplored Mojave, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who has supported this series and been a fan. This is like a really cool moment for me, just everything we've explored within Fallout New Vegas, and to have so many people who have enjoyed this series has been amazing. But we still have 1 grave left before we end this video, so let's go check it out. And our last and final grave is located at the Northern Passage. This is in the very middle northern part of the map, and we just have a lone grave outside of a cave. And then next to this grave, we have a rather inconspicuous looking cave. So I figured we might as well go ahead and check it out.
I pray for the safety of all good people who come to Zion, even Gentiles. but we can't expect God to do all the work.
Howdy. My name is Jed Masterson, and I'm a caravan boss for the Happy Trails Caravan Company. If you're hearing this, I have a job offer for you. Happy Trails is organizing an expedition north into Utah, off the Long 15, and we need people. We're looking for caravan guards, prospectors, couriers. If you're used to humping it across the waste, straight toward trouble, we want you. If you got a Pip-Boy, we definitely want you. On the other hand, if you're a greenhorn or a city slicker spinning tales about your skills, you can kindly go hang. If we like your gumption, we'll pay you square and treat you fair. Find me, Jed Masterson, at the Northern Passage if you're interested. Luck to you.
Hello, Jed. The Army of Otters. I heard you could use one more.
Howdy, friend. Heard my little broadcast, did you? Yeah, you look the type. We're a smaller company out of Sacktown, up in the northern part of the NCR. We run some business through New Reno. They're on the Little Loop. Had a nice run to Salt Lake City, too, but then we lost contact with New Canaan, and that went all to hell. Well, it ain't good, I'll tell you that. It's not like the Mojave or the NCR. Hell, even Arizona under Caesar is safer. You got raiders all over the damn place. Tribes of degenerates that'll eat you as soon as look at you. Regional warlords, the works. That's right. The folks that lived in Zion before the war, they didn't just get a little savage. They're downright feral. Most of them don't even speak English anymore. You've got to get yourself a new Canaanite translator to talk to them. The ones you really gotta watch out for are the Whitelegs from the Great Salt Lake. They'll attack just about anyone that ain't one of theirs. Oh, one more thing. Don't mention the name Joshua Graham to anyone. Anyone. Just don't. It makes the new Canaanites powerful uncomfortable, and it scares the britches off the tribals. Don't talk about the Burn Man either while you're at it. Trust me on this one. It's for your own good.
Looking to join this caravan, huh? Look to me like you can handle yourself. Earning my keep. Jed hired me on as a caravan guard for this expedition of his. The work suits me. I've tried staying put in one place, but it never works out.
Nice job, Eagle Eye. Of course I got a Pip-Boy and a vault suit. So what? Jed says it's got maps and shit like that. So that's how I'm gonna guide this caravan where it needs to go. Not that I didn't know all that.
Well, all right then. Let's get moving. We got a long road ahead of us. The Legion appeared in Arizona. I reckon you know all about them. Turns out Caesar's first war chief, the Malpace Legate, was a new Canaanite, Joshua Graham. Legend goes that Graham was the meanest, toughest son of a bitch in the whole damn Legion. The new Canaanites wouldn't talk about it. They were ashamed. Guess I can't blame them. Well, at Hoover Dam, the Malpace Legate finally met his match. Hanlon and Oliver kicked his new Canaanite butt right back over the river. Caesar had to make an example for the others, to show them that even at the highest level, failure wouldn't be tolerated. He had Graham covered in pitch, lit on fire, and thrown into the Grand Canyon. People say he didn't even scream on the way down. Not long after, some of the slaves and tribals started to talk. Said Graham wasn't dead. Shouldn't have been any surprise. All this talk bothered Caesar, so he forbade anyone from speaking his name. wanted to erase Joshua Graham from history. He got his wish. Joshua Graham disappeared, and in his place came legends of the burned man walking the wastes. Probably just a tribal ghost story. But New Canaan's been silent for a long time. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe the mal-paced legate is dead. Or maybe Joshua Graham did crawl out of that canyon and finally found his way back home. All right, people. Been a long couple of weeks, but here we are. Zion. I know your feet hurt. I know you're tired, but I need everyone's mind on the trail ahead.
Ain't the trail ahead worries me, Jed. Those descents we made through that slot canyon back up there. Ain't no way we're getting back out the way we come. And then what?
God damn it, Stella heard you the first time. And the 15th, too. The new Canaanites will know a way. And if they don't, we've got the maps on our friend's Pip-Boy over there. Enough lollygagging. Get moving. And keep an eye out for tribals.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. I was trying to use more of the actual game to tell a lot more of this story, especially for the beginning of Honest Hearts. I really like this DLC, I have a lot of really fond memories of it, so I wanted to make it something special. So I hope you enjoyed that intro, kind of introducing the story and the characters of Zion. Now, at the beginning here of the Southern Passage, we can find a lot of duffel bags, and these will contain various loot. Of course, we just survived an ambush, and there are several white legs hanging around still, trying to cause us some trouble. So definitely make sure to come prepared with some weapons and ammo. Of course, you're limited with how much weapons and ammo you can bring here. You can only bring 75 pounds, or if you have the strong back perk or a survival skill of 50 will allow you to take 100 pounds. Now these white legs had a lot of good loot on them, including a 45 auto submachine gun, which was added in Honest Hearts, so it's unique to this DLC. Now I have to say Zion National Park is absolutely gorgeous. The developers did a really amazing job capturing the beauty of this place from real life. And I got really close to killing Follows Chalk there, who is one of our first companions here. I don't know what would have happened if the bullet would have hit him, if it would have killed him, but I definitely was kind to Follows Chalk because I wanted him as my companion. Whenever you climb a mountain in Zion National Park, you will get map markers for nearby locations and a temporary boost to perception of +3, so definitely pretty darn good. After talking to Follows Chalk, I decided to quickly head back across this very stable bridge and check out this area underneath the cliff. We can find a wagon that is almost about to fall off, however it's barely hanging on. You can actually jump in the back of the wagon and there is a metal box, however it was empty for me and contained no loot. So that is quite sad, and Follows Chalk is just watching me trying to kill myself. And then also back here we have a banana yucca plant and a cactus, but there's not really anything down over on this cliffside, but I just thought it was kind of a cool little niche area. Then as we make our way up, we can find some paintings on the wall, and it's very cool and very scenic, of course. And then there's also tree stumps littered around Zion National Park, as Follows Chalk told me here. So I went back and looked inside of the trunk in order to find some honey mesquite. Not really much, but definitely something to take note of as you venture across Zion. that the logs are lootable. And with that, we're going to conclude this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. We have many locations and a lot of story to dive into within Zion National Park, and I really look forward to playing through Honest Hearts. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comment section below, and as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we are in Zion Valley, and we're going to be checking out the Spine. And man, what an immaculate view you get from the top. This location is freaking awesome. It does a great job at introducing the world of Zion Valley to the player character. You can see so many cool areas from on top, so many landmarks, and it's just a very good introduction to this DLC. So let's check out the Spine. So here's the location of the Spine on the Pip-Boy. As you can see, it is right on the path towards the beginning. As you approach the Spine for the first time, you're going to see this green gecko get thrown off this small rock by a Yaoguai. This is our first introduction to Yaoguai within Fallout New Vegas, as there are no Yaoguai back in the Mojave. Of course, Yaoguai are a pretty frequent enemy within Fallout 3. Now, this Yaoguai was going absolutely berserk. I'm not sure what in the heck he was doing, but we managed to kill him thanks to our good friend, the anti-material rifle. Also, we have a green gecko, as I said, that got thrown off by that cliff. And then on top, we can find a lot of hiking trail signs, along with the dead giant Yaoguai. Took 3 bullets from an anti-material rifle, so I have to say, he's a pretty tough son of a bitch. Sorry, perhaps I should say she, because we can find a Yaoguai cub at the top. 1 bullet is enough to kill the cub. And this path will lead us to the summit of the Spine. Now, from the summit, you can get some very amazing views, as we saw in the beginning, and you can see several different locations from the top of this mountain. Now, if Follows Chalk is your companion, as he is with me, you will of course get +3 perception upon reaching the top of this mountain, along with the nearby map markers of Two Skies Cave, the Virgin River, and the old Rockville Bridge will be revealed on your Pip-Boy. The +3 boost to perception only lasts for 3 minutes, but I guess that makes sense. Then we can see, as I mentioned, so many places. We can see a crashed plane off in the distance, what is probably an abandoned radio tower, and then a lot of these small stations riddled across Zion Valley. So you get a really amazing introduction to this DLC, as I said in the beginning. Then we have some stone ramps that lead us to the top of the mountain. Also, it started to rain while I was in this location. Fun fact, this was the first time in Fallout when we would experience rain. Before this, there had never been rain in Fallout before. However, obviously afterwards, Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 did feature rain. And then as you can see over here on this cliff, there is a skeleton along with a campfire sack. I wanted to throw the skeleton off the cliff, however his hand was lodged into the ground and I couldn't move the body. Back at the base of the mountain, we can find some pretty crazy paintings on the side of this mountain. Don't really know what it is of, but hey, it looks pretty freaking cool. Then I found this really weird, like, alcove, kind of at the bottom of the canyon where the river is, but there's nothing at the bottom besides some Xander root. But when I came back to this location in the daytime, I actually had some kind of random encounter with some NPCs fighting each other. We had a dead horse warrior, 2 of them, fighting a white leg bone breaker, who was pretty freaking tough. I shot him with a bullet from the anti-material rifle, and it really didn't do a whole lot to him. So all of these NPCs here were really strong. And then Follows Chalk killed somebody as I pressed a button, creating a very weird, like, turn of the character. And then this freaking warrior just walked off the cliff. And at first I thought he would just kill himself, but he didn't die. He found an invisible barrier, and he just started walking on thin air. And I was just really amazed at what was going on. He appeared stuck. He didn't like when I pointed my gun at him. And then as I stood on his head, we began sinking down into the invisible barrier. I had no clue what was going on, but I'm glad I was recording because it was a really funny glitch to capture. And then Follows Chalk also decided to drop off the face of the cliff. But eventually he made his way down. And after a few seconds, maybe about 30 seconds or so, this dead horse warrior also finally decided to make his way down, and he just continued to sneak his way around this area. I have no idea where he was going, why he was floating, but you know, just like a staircase to heaven, or in this case maybe a staircase to hell or Zion Valley. But a very interesting glitch that I'm glad I captured on camera. And as is with the case of many locations in Fallout, these locations are based on real-world locations. However, I found out that many locations within Zion National Park are extremely inaccurate. The creators of this DLC used a lot of creative liberty in order to adapt the real-life Zion National Park to New Vegas. I could not find any confirmation that the spine is based on a real-world place. However, there is a rock formation within Zion National Park known as Angel's Landing. And there is a trail to the top of this landing, and part of the trail is called the Spine. And from the top, you can get some really good views of Zion National Park. I do not have confirmation that this is what this location is based on. However, it seems very likely because of the views you can get from the top. However, in real life, this hike is actually somewhat dangerous. As of 2024, 18 people have died trying to get to the top of Angel's Landing, and since 2022, hikers need a permit in order to go to the top. But that is all I could find about a possible real-world connection. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we are in Zion Valley, and we're going to be looking at the old Rockville Bridge. This is a location near the entrance of Zion Valley when you enter the valley. And this bridge is actually based on a real-world location, obviously the same name, the old Rockville Bridge, located in Rockville, Utah. Now, there are some big differences between the New Vegas Bridge and the real-life bridge. In real life, this is very historic because it is the last surviving Parker through truss bridge in the state of Utah. And it was extremely important for the development of Zion National Park, and the bridge was built in 1923. So today it is well over 100 years old. Obviously the one in Fallout looks different, so perhaps in the Fallout universe this was the original bridge, or the OG bridge was destroyed. But let's check it out.
So I finally get to explore all those taboo places without the other scouts yelling at me? Can't wait.
And here you can see the location on the Pip-Boy, just northeast of the Spine where we were last video. Then as we approach, we can find a burnt out car on the side of the road, and this road is severely deteriorated. As we approach the bridge, we can find the sign for the road, and then also a truck, and inside of the truck there's a skeleton and a toolbox. However, there wasn't a lot inside of the toolbox, just a lockpick for me. But, you know, not bad. And also the skeleton has a wrench, so I don't know how he died, but obviously that person died a long time ago. And then underneath the bridge, I encountered a lot of ants and also a giant mantis. However, the giant mantis didn't want to fight me, and he just ran away, and I actually failed to kill him. So kind of an interesting encounter. I've never seen the giant mantises run away like that. So I don't know if he was scared or what was happening, but as you can see, I missed all of my shots on him. But the giant worker ants were wanting to attack me, so we killed them. And you can see here, Follows Chalk actually tried to kill the giant mantis. It was like swimming in the water, but he also failed to get it. But, you know, I wasn't going to go chasing after a mantis. It's kind of a waste of time. But underneath the bridge, we can see the stone pillars that help support the bridge. Up here we have some datura root, but really not a whole lot. Then as we moved north of the bridge, we encountered a lone cazador, and shooting its wing is very effective in order to kill it, no problem. Then as we move further up the road, there is an abandoned truck on the side of the road with datura root next to it, and also a toolbox that had a bobby pin. So pretty good, always taking free bobby pins. And then for whatever reason, there is a skeleton laying on the hood of the car. As we make our way up to the east of the bridge, there is a small mountain. We can find a hollowed out log on the top that will contain random loot, and along with some Xander root. And there's also a stone ramp that leads to the top of this mountain, so you can get some pretty good views of the surrounding area, and it is quite beautiful. Also, it provides a really good lookout point over the bridge. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. If you saw my last video, then you know about the mantis. Follows Chalk was still trying to kill that mantis as I made my way over to Ranger Substation Peregrine. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at Ranger Substation Peregrine. This substation is located towards the beginning of the map, just east of the old Rockville Bridge. Now, I was a little bit curious about the name Peregrine, because I'll be honest, I wasn't really familiar with this word or name before this video, and upon further research I discovered it was probably named after the peregrine falcon, which is a falcon in North America that is the fastest animal in the world. According to National Geographic, the bird has reached speeds up to 242 miles per hour, which is absolutely insane and just something I never knew was possible by a living creature. But let's jump into Ranger Substation Peregrine. And as you approach, you're going to see a lot of signs on the road for, like, recreational activities. And here's the location of Ranger Substation Peregrine on the map. As I approached, I found a young gecko just kind of walking along the side of the road. Very easy to kill. And then here we can find a sign pointing towards the substation, along with several parked cars that have obviously been here since the pre-war, probably unfortunately died in the nuclear apocalypse. As we make our way up the hill, you're going to see a young gecko running down, being chased by a yaoguai. I don't actually know if that happens every time. I couldn't find any confirmation of it, but I just thought it was pretty freaking epic and pretty freaking cool. So in the comment section below, let me know if you experienced that as well. And as we made our way up, there was a big horner who was apparently hostile to me, so I shot him in the head. And then below the substation, there's like this small valley with a lot of kind of critters in it, like boat flies and ants, so be careful of that. And then I found a yaoguai cub over here down this little pathway. And then as we approach the substation, we can find this boulder with all of these hand markings just littered all over it. And I have to say, this is a quite beautiful area with the sun setting behind the station. I was really in awe of what I saw from this game, especially my whole time in Zion National Park, or Zion Valley in Fallout, has been extraordinary. The devs did a really good job on this DLC. Inside the substation, we can find some posters for Zion National Park. Obviously, these are from the pre-war era, just advertising the park and the beauty within the park. And from what I hear in real life, it is extraordinarily beautiful. However, I've never been there myself. In this toolbox, we can find the cattle prod, which is an interesting weapon because it can be used to KO your enemies instead of killing your enemies. So just kind of an interesting weapon that you can pick up. On the top of the station, there isn't a whole lot. There is an ammunition box and now a dead scorpion. But inside the ammunition box, I found a 45 auto pistol, along with some 45 rounds, which I had not found yet. And there's also a ranger hat up here, but besides that, not a whole lot. And then I was trying to look at these clipboards to see what kind of information was on them. Obviously, I doubt something like this would last 200 years, but I thought it was kind of cool. Perhaps they were surveying the weather, or who knows what they were doing, but hey, if you work in a national park or you know what those clipboards might have on them, please post it in the comment section below. And then I came down here where those critters were, and I killed a boat fly. There was also an ant down here that I killed earlier, but be careful of all the critters and animals in this area. And then this slope goes down to a crashed bus. However, I think that's a story for another day. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at the Zion Valley Welcome Booth. This is a location just southeast of where we were last time at Ranger Substation Peregrine. So, let's quickly take a look at this location as it is pretty small. And here you can see it on the map. It's kind of towards the southeastern part of Zion Valley. As you approach the Welcome Booth, you're going to see this sign that says Zion National Park on it, along with some of these handprints on the building. There's 2 picnic tables that have all kinds of stuff on them, mainly empty bottles, but also a copy of Lad's Life. Then over here on this barbecue grill, we have a spork. And now we have officially completed our Fallout journey. We have found a spork, and we will become death. So let me just tuck that right in my pocket, and we'll go back to it. But there's some cans of pork and beans, and also a campfire. But there's really not a whole lot here besides just a travel point. Over here we have a toilet, and this is a really wild toilet. I didn't mean to drink the water out of it, but hey, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. There's also a toilet paper dispenser in it, and it's just kind of out here in the open. And the back of it's just a plank of wood, so I just thought it was a really wild looking toilet. Then inside the actual welcome booth, we have a first aid box with some medical supplies, and also a ranger hat. I already picked one up, along with some ammunition. And then to the south, we can actually follow State Route 9 for quite some time. I'll speed it up. Also, I found a dead horse stalker just hanging down here for whatever reason. But continuing down the state route, and we can find that the road has clearly collapsed, or the canyon has clearly collapsed. There's a crushed car and a suitcase that had some somewhat decent loot inside of it. But that is all for the Zion Valley Welcome Booth. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time.
Oh, one more thing. Don't mention the name Joshua Gray to anyone. Just don't. It makes the new Canaanites powerful uncomfortable. And it scares the britches off the tribals. Don't talk about the Burn Man either while you're at it. Trust me on this one. It's for your own good.
Joshua Graham. He leads our tribe. Thanks to him, the dead horses are strong and safe from our enemies. He'll want to talk to anyone coming up from Southways. Guess that means just you now. Come, I can take you to him.
Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at the Eastern Virgin up to Angel Cave. As we continue our trek across Zion Valley, we are trying to find a way out. At the Eastern Virgin River, we can find a Brahmin skull, a small shack, and a bed, cooking pot, along with a sack with various loot. And then behind the sack, we can also find a hollowed out log that also contains various loot. As we make our way towards Angel Cave, where ultimately Joshua Graham is waiting for us, we can truly admire the beauty of Zion Valley.
There are 3, make that 4 tribes here in Zion. You've already met the Whitelegs on the way in. In this camp, you'll find dead horses. In the Narrows, the Sorrows. And finally, there's Daniel and myself. We're New Canaanites. They attack everyone who isn't a Whiteleg, especially caravans. They don't know how to survive on their own, so they have to raid. But as for why they are here, they are trying to wipe us out. All of us. They want to join Caesar's legion, and they can only prove their worth by destroying the new Canaanites and everyone we shelter. It's been hundreds of years since the war. They've developed their own languages. Take the dead horses. We think they were originally refugees from a place called Rez, east of the Grand Canyon. They speak a combination of Rez and a language spoken by travelers who were visiting Rez when the bombs fell. Over time, the two languages blended. I was a translator years ago, but it's hard to keep up with all of the tribal variations. The valley belongs to God, but no. The dead horses live at Dead Horse Point, up the Colorado River. They came here because I asked them to. Before I returned to the fold, I visited them years earlier. I looked much different then, but I left an impression on them. I taught them how to hunt more efficiently, how to maintain their weapons and pre-war equipment. When I returned, they showed their appreciation.
And with that, we have the history of Zion Valley from the man himself, Joshua Graham. Here we can see the Dead Horse Camp along with Angel Cave. And if you have the Wild Wasteland perk, then two bears high-fiving will come running out of the cave, give you a couple fist bumps, and then run back inside. This is an Easter egg and reference to the ink blot test during Ain't That a Kick in the Head, when Doc Mitchell is evaluating your health. Essentially, when Fallout came out, a lot of players noted that this picture really looks like two bears giving a high five, and the developers liked it a lot, and then they referenced it in Honest Hearts, one of my favorite Easter eggs in Fallout. Upon entering the cave, we will be greeted by a dead horse disciple, and she will tell us where Joshua Graham is, but to not try anything funny. Otherwise, we will be attacked, essentially, and that Joshua Graham is a total badass and that he will kick our ass, which I have to agree. Of course, Joshua Graham has emerged as a fan favorite character in the Fallout universe, so this was definitely a very special moment in order to put him on the unexplored Mojave, kind of like Ulysses back in Lonesome Road. So after talking to her, and after she gives us a warning, we can make our way through Angel Cave, up a stone ramp to the upper levels of the cavern, and then Joshua Graham is waiting for us.
We should have given you a better welcome on your first visit to Zion. But from what I hear, the Whitelegs beat us to it. Whitelegs seem to be the only visitors we have these days. And I wouldn't have expected anyone from the Mojave to come looking for us. And you're a courier, no less. Not the one I was expecting, but I suppose he wouldn't have come with a caravan. I don't know if you were close to the other members of your group, but you have my sympathy. I pray for the safety of all good people who come to Zion, even Gentiles. But we can't expect God to do all the work. The dead horses are capable scouts. Nothing passes into or out of Zion without my hearing of it. Happy trails. I remember. They were good friends. I have bad news for your employers. New Canaan was destroyed, its citizens scattered. All because of the Whitelegs. And Caesar, of course. The Whitelegs want to join the Legion. Caesar's rite of passage is the destruction of the new Canaanites, almost assuredly because of me. The good news is that we can help you find your way back. Daniel, one of the other new Canaanites, has made many maps of the region. The bad news is that we can't help you right now, not with everything that's going on. You're a good neighbor to us. We all go through periods of darkness. In such times, we can turn to the Lord. But it's good to have friends. Daniel and I need pre-war tools to help us navigate beyond Zion. Should we need to evacuate, these instruments will be vital to us. Normally, we would have some of the dead horses or sorrows look for them. But many pre-war buildings in the valley are taboo. They won't go inside. Thank you. Follows Chalk can help you find your way around the valley. He's inexperienced, but he knows enough of our language to ignore the taboos about pre-war buildings.
And with that, we have our pathway to get out of Zion Valley. Now, of course, at the beginning of the video, you could hear more from Joshua Graham, a lot about the history of Zion Valley and the tribes within it. So, he has some very cool and well-written dialogue, and he's a very fun NPC to talk to. Now, if you actually head up to him and by his desk, he is reloading these 45 auto pistols, and you can actually steal 4 of them. However, the rest are just scenic items. They're not really guns. And then at the back of the cave here, we have a quick exit that puts us near the Zion Valley welcome booth and the East Virgin River. So from here, you can get a really good vantage point of the area below you, of course, the East Virgin River and the welcome booth, as I mentioned earlier. Now, from here, I decided to talk to Follows Chalk, because he can give us an interesting quest that is based near Angel Cave in the Dead Horses camp in the mountains above. So let's check it out. So to start the quest, just simply talk to Follows Chalk and ask him about the nature in Zion Valley. And after asking about nature, Follows Chalk will tell you that the mountain bighorners have been unusually aggressive recently, and that he suspects that there is a missing calf within their pack. So he wants the courier to go find the missing calf and return it to his mother. And as a bonus, he wants us to not kill any of the bighorners, which can become aggressive if the player gets too close. And with that, Bighorners of the Eastern Virgin is started. If we head back to Dead Horses Camp, we can find a large kind of rocky ramp that leads to the cliffs above the camp and above Angel Cave. And up here is where we can find the mountain bighorners. Up here you can get some really immaculate views of the surrounding area in this small canyon. So definitely a good place to come and get some views, even if it's not for hunting bighorners or rescuing a bighorner calf. And in order to attract the calf, you're going to need 3 banana yucca fruit. However, there are 3 plants along the path towards the calf. So if you don't have the banana yucca with you, don't worry about it, because you can just pick them up as you go. Now, I decided to use a stealth boy to make sure I had absolutely no problems with this quest. If you do kill the bighorners, you can still complete the quest. However, you will receive a lot less XP. So it is obviously for your benefit to try and do it without hurting or killing the bighorners. So just follow this path on the mountain. You're going to have to cross over the canyon a few times on some archways. And then here are 2 banana yucca plants on this little slope, and there's going to be a young bighorner calf right next to this plant. Keep making your way along this path, and eventually you're going to see this small canyon kind of tucked away in this rock. And in this canyon is where the lost bighorner calf is. So go in, and at the very back you will find him, the lost bighorner calf. Give him the banana yucca fruit, and then he will begin to follow you. Although after giving it to him, it took him about like 5 seconds for whatever reason to begin following me. Eventually, though, he will stop following you, so you have to give him more fruit. It should take only 3 fruit. However, according to the wiki, you might make a mistake, or if you accidentally go off track, it could require an additional fruit, just so you're aware. But if you just take the most direct path, it should only take 3 fruit. Then just lure him back to his mother, which was that first bighorner you will encounter. And from here you will have 2 options. You can either keep the calf for yourself or return the calf to the mother. I decided to return the calf in order to make Follows Chalk happy, and it's just the right thing to do.
What can I tell you? Whew, glad to hear it. That'll be some happy mama, huh? Thank you. Really, it means a lot to me.
So on top of the XP, you will also get a war club, some 45 ammunition, and a 45 automatic pistol. So some pretty decent rewards for this quest, and I had a lot of fun completing this quest, because I'll be honest, I had no recollection of it, and I don't know if I've ever completed it before. So today we covered 3 locations: the East Virgin, the Dead Horses Camp, and Angel Cave, as well as with getting our introduction to Joshua Graham, or at least our first formal introduction. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at the crashed scout bus, this location in Zion Canyon, as we continue our adventure in Zion. Now, this location is also known as the place where the little ones fell, which will be mentioned by Follows Chalk. And this implies that this bus was carrying scouts, maybe Boy or Girl Scouts, and that there were probably 2 adult caretakers since there's 2 adult skeletons at the scene of the crash. Now, this is a pretty basic location. There's not a lot here, but it is a part of the quest roadside attraction, which is a part of the main quest line for Honest Hearts. So let's check out Crashed Scout Bus. And here on the Pip-Boy, you can see the location of the Crashed Scout Bus, kind of in between a lot of these areas on the southern part of the map. Now, when I was up here looking, I noticed a duffel bag on the cliff, and I figured I would try and look at it later in the video. As I made my way down from this cliff, I noticed that like ripples in the water started to form as I was above it, indicating that the ripples are not formed by you, but is kind of where you are on the map. The Crashed Scout Bus sits at the bottom of this kind of canyon, and as I was walking there, I noticed that Follows Chalk got stuck on some kind of invisible wall. Of course, I was high up above, so he had difficulty coming down. Approaching the scene is extremely tragic. There are 16 child skeletons, along with 2 adult skeletons, and various loot, toys, and lunch boxes. Inside the bus, we can find a compass, which is what we need for the quest roadside attraction. And with 30 repair, we can fix the compass, or we can repair it with parts, and the parts are also located in the bus. Just up a little bit more, you'll eventually see the compass sensor module. Now, while the game does not directly say what happened here, we can assume that these scouts were visiting on the day of the Great War, an atomic bomb went off, the bus crashed, everyone died. Pretty tragic. As we come up, I wanted to find this duffel bag, so I came up from the other side, and I could see the duffel bag on the cliff, so I fell down, and lo and behold, there is a duffel bag, but there wasn't a whole lot in it, but, you know, better than nothing. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please drop them in the comments section below, and, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Ant Mound along with the Virgin Fork Campground. These are 2 locations very close to together, however there's not a whole lot here, so I figured I'd go ahead and throw them together, and then we can just cover some of the interesting information about these areas. So let's dive into it. And as you can see here on the Pip-Boy, here is Virgin Fork Campground in Antboro, just northeast of the old Rockville Bridge. Now, here I am on the old Rockville Bridge, and there was an ant on the other side of the bridge, and I can assume these ants are coming from the ant mound, or sorry, the ant burrow. And there were some white legs hanging out by the burrows, so I had to go ahead and take them out. So just be aware that different enemies can spawn around this area, such as white legs and rad scorpions. I actually have a rad scorpion show up later in the video. But as for the ant mound, it actually isn't a whole lot. We cannot go inside because it's blocked by rocks. However, if you bring Follows Chalk here, he will mention that his people sometimes call the ants picnic killers. However, he doesn't understand why they call them picnic killers. Obviously some kind of reference from the old world. Moving on to the Virgin Fork Campground. This is just a small campground that is actually based on the real-life Virgin Fork Campground located in Zion National Park. There's 3 campers here along with some picnic tables. Inside of the campers we can find suitcases which sometimes might contain pre-war money and old world clothes. but truthfully not a whole lot here. Next to the campground, there's a small hill we can climb to the top of to get some pretty good views of the surrounding area. But for the most part, that's it for these two locations. They serve as fast travel points on the map, and they add to the beauty of Zion Valley. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Aerie, or possibly Aerie. I looked up a lot of different pronunciations for this, and I found different pronunciations. However, I do believe the correct pronunciation to be Aerie. Anyways, Aerie is a word used to refer to a bird's nest, and this location is quote-unquote the central bird's nest of Zion National Park, or in other words, it's the center for the National Park Service's network of ranger stations in Zion National Park before the Great War. It serves as the central point between Ranger Station Eagle, Ranger Station Peregrine, which we covered in a previous video, and Ranger Station Osprey. So, a pretty cool reference, and honestly, this is a very beautiful location, so let's check it out. And here you can see the location of the Aerie. This is located just north of Two Skies Cave, and coming straight from Two Skies Cave is the easiest way to reach this location. And as you approach, Follows Chalk will have some dialogue about the location.
See that tower? Back when folks used them to talk to each other on the air. Not like with signal drums. They could actually talk. Amazing, huh?
For the most part, though, the Aerie is just a copy and paste of the other ranger substations located around Zion National Park or Zion Valley, just with a large radio tower next to it. As I mentioned earlier, this was the central location that would have been used for communication with the other ranger substations. Inside, however, there is not a whole lot. We have some food, and there is also a first aid box with a stim pack and Med-X in it for me. Who knows what it'll have for you. Then there's also a gun case with some ammunition and, of course, a bed. But besides that, all there is are two mountain peaks that offer some pretty incredible views of the surrounding area. And if you bring Follows Chalk with you, it'll give you +3 perception for 3 minutes, along with a reveal of some of the nearby locations. And throughout much of this video, it was raining at this location, but here we can see the substation in the sun, and the surrounding area is truly quite beautiful. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Northfolk Campground. This is a location just north of the Aerie, which we explored in the previous video, and just east of the Northfolk Bridge. Now this location really doesn't have much, it is just a small campground. However, there are some interesting things in the surrounding area, so let's go ahead and check it out. And here's the location of the Northfolk Campground. Like I said before, it's located just north of the Aerie, pretty much directly north. And as you approach, you're going to find a lone camper along with a picnic table and several signs indicating that this was a place for camping, fishing, and all kinds of other fun outdoor activities. There is various junk and litter scattered around the campsite, but besides that, there's not a whole lot of loot. Inside of the camper, we can find a bedroll and a suitcase, a couple of suitcases. However, there really wasn't much in them besides some pre-war clothes and some cigarettes and empty Sunset Sarsaparilla bottles. But just to the northeast of the campground, we can find a burned down house, or maybe some kind of ranger station or something. Don't really know what it was. There's no indication as to what it was, but it has clearly been burnt down by God knows what. Also on the cliff over here, you can get some really beautiful views of the Virgin River. And then I also found these dead horses doing God knows what. They were just kind of running around in the river, and then one of them started like freaking flying around, going up the cliff, and eventually I saw one of them go all the way to the top of the cliff over here, and he seemed to place something or take something from the edge of the cliff. Don't know what was happening, but I'm glad I experienced it. However, that location, I feel, is a location for another time. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please drop them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out Sorrow's Fork Campground. This is a location just east of Ranger Station Osprey and southeast of Caterpillar's Mound. This is a location kind of on that island within Zion Valley, which is surrounded by the Virgin River on all sides. This is a pretty small location, but it does feature a campground and a dock, so let's dive into it. And here you can see the location on the Pip-Boy. As far as locations I have, it's just north of Northfolk Campground. As you approach, there are a couple of campers along with some picnic tables and also a dock behind. Now, there's nothing really inside of the campers besides, as usual, some suitcases and bedrolls. This is pretty standard at this point, but it did give us a good location to heal up after I took some fall damage off screen. These suitcases will sometimes have pre-war money, and they will almost always have some pre-war casual wear. Over here we can find a pile of junk, but nothing within the junk itself. And as I've said before, there is a dock behind the campground with a boat that is in very, very bad shape, and some nuka-cola bottles floating around. There's a small island in the middle of the Virgin River here, and we can get a very good view of the surrounding area. But besides that, this area can be used as a small camp for the player due to the campfire, and the suitcases provide for safe storage, and obviously there's bedrolls for sleeping. Sometimes upon entering the camp area, there may be a dog or a bighorner calf, but they cannot be interacted with. Also, fast traveling to this location could spawn a number of dangerous creatures, such as cazadors, yaguai, and scorpions. So be careful if you ever fast travel here. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time.